OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on this Thursday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Owen and Ger with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. And we've got plenty coming your way. We're going to be chatting to Collingwood star Aishling Sheridan live from Australia in the next hour or so. We're going to be joined by Cian Fahey to look ahead to the weekend's NFL wildcard games. We're going to be joined by Joe Molloy, actually, to talk about some of the golfers to look out for this year, a little bit of a Manchester United debrief, and Andy Mitten as well will be up in around 15 minutes' time to look back on the Manchester derby last night. I dare say, Ger, plenty of people set out to watch the Manchester derby last night and ended up getting a little bit distracted by what was going on CNN.
Yeah, I think Miguel Delaney tweeted suddenly the Manchester derby doesn't seem like an important thing after all, and he was right. What was happening, what's unfolding on CNN were, moments of history that are going to be recorded forever. The storming of the Capitol by Trump supporters, Trump's inability and refusal to condemn them in any way, really, and then Joe Biden's proper presidential and history-making speech. The backdrop to all this is obviously that the Electoral College votes were being certified, and that process was interrupted. That stopped for a while. There was also major doubt about whether or not that would actually, or what would happen when that vote took place, because loads of Republicans had come together to decide that they were going to try and prevent that from happening. Up until the previous day, Trump was saying that Mike Pence has the possibility of not ratifying that. Trump was out making a speech at one point where he was assuming that Mike Pence would step in and save the day for him, and then Pence was, busily issuing a statement himself saying, "I'm not going to do that. I'm really," and then he unfollowed him on Twitter. In the midst of all this, it was definitely 3 or 4 hours of absolute madness and mayhem of the type that you expected to see at the breakup of the old Soviet Union after the fall of the Iron Curtain. You would see scenes of fights from various legislatures around the world, and you'd go, "Oh, that kind of makes a lot of sense. That's an ex-Slavic country where tensions are running high post-Civil War," and then all of a sudden it's actually happening in the US Capitol building, and it's unfolding live on TV. And I was a little bit surprised at how crappy the pictures were for a while. There was definitely this seems to be being done on an old Nokia as opposed to high-end stuff. And then Donny arrives in the scene and is strolling around explaining what's going on. As somebody put it on Twitter, having seen worse in Carlo nightclubs throughout his life, very nonplussed by the whole violence unfolding around him.
Donny arrived last night. Donny trending on Twitter was probably the only highlight from seeing that last night. It definitely did have kind of a Roma's burning sort of vibe off it. It's you're sort of almost rubbing your eyes thinking, how is this thing actually happening? Apparently, Pence didn't actually unfollow Trump on Twitter last night. That was misreported by all accounts here. So
I went to check, and he wasn't following him. He was following one of the other accounts. Trump has multiple accounts. So when that happened, maybe he refollowed him. Certainly, I went and verified that. This can't be true. I mean, it turned out he only follows about 45 people, so it didn't take very long to check it. Maybe he hadn't previously followed. And then Trump has had his account suspended for 12 hours. So it's wild. It's been a wild time. And here's the thing. At one stage, it felt like, ooh, this could really turn into something horrific and nasty and violent. And it's a fairly safe assumption that many of the people who were in that protest are gun owners. Whether or not they were carrying yesterday, I don't know. Certainly the way very lax policing is going to be a topic of debate for the next few days. So you were really worried that this could be a powder keg and it could turn into something horrific. Now that the dust has settled, it's dark, and 4 people have died, but it seems like it hasn't resulted in an eruption of mass violence. It's possible to look on last night's events with a little more calmness, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess things are still developing a little bit this morning. It's always interesting to see how this spills over into the sporting context, especially because there were basketball games on last night, and the NBA have obviously been really vocal over the last few months, really active over the last few months in terms of actually doing things to let their voices be heard loud and clear. And there was a moment last night where it looked like the NBA match between Miami Heat and Boston Celtics wasn't going to go ahead. It looked as if the players were going to walk off before tip-off and actually not play. It looked like for a moment it wasn't going to happen in the Milwaukee versus Detroit game as well. It turned out in Milwaukee against Detroit, the players took a knee after tip-off. In Heat versus Celtics, it was a knee during the national anthem. And of course, you have a load of idiots on Twitter responding to that, saying it's absolutely disrespectful to the anthem to be kneeling, despite, or disrespectful to the flag to be taking a knee, despite the fact that obviously we saw plenty of Star Spangled Banners marching through Capitol Hill yesterday as well. Brad Stevens of the Celtics afterwards was saying, to be honest, at 30 minutes before tip-off, I didn't think we were playing. He said then coaches left the room, players spoke after they walked off the court, and then they chose to play. He said, if our guys chose not to play tonight, they had the full support of my staff, myself, and our organisation. The players then released a statement afterwards saying 2021 is a new year, but some things have not changed. We played tonight's game with a heavy heart after yesterday's decision in Kenosha, and knowing that protesters in our nation's capital are treated differently by political leaders depending on what side of certain issues they're on. There's a drastic difference between the way protesters this past spring and summer were treated, and the encouragement given to today's protesters who acted illegally just shows how much more work we have to do. They said they decided to play the game to try to bring joy into people's lives, but we must not forget the injustices in our society. And one of the members of the Boston Celtics team who's really thoughtful, really well educated, and is always somebody worth listening to is Jaylen Brown. And he was speaking to NBA TV after the game last night.
Before we get started, we definitely want to speak to some of the things that's been going on in our society. It reminds me of what Dr. Martin Luther King has said, that there is two split different Americas. In one America, you get killed by sleeping in your car, selling cigarettes, or playing in your backyard. And in another America, you get to storm the Capitol, and no tear gas, no massive arrests, none of that. So I think it's obvious. It's 2021. I don't think anything has changed. We want to still acknowledge that. We want to still push for the change that we're looking for. But as of yet, we have not seen it. We want to continue to keep conversations alive and do our part.
He has a point here. Like the protesters literally staying inside the red rope as you walk into the main, I don't know what it is, the main hall of the Capitol, where maybe that's the whole difference here, that they actually didn't step out of line, that they all queued in an orderly fashion before storming the place.
Yes, that's a good point. It was they were nice protesters. It's funny about the ethnic makeup of those nice protesters and how they were treated. There was pictures of a cop inside being asked to pose for a selfie and happily doing so. And then there's other footage of the cops opening up the barriers to let them come in early on. So it's going to be very interesting to see when the analysis is done of how this was policed versus how other instances of protest have been policed in the past. And obviously, I don't think that was a protest last night either. So just before everybody jumps on me about that one. The other very interesting thing that happened obviously yesterday was that if everybody remembers in the election, there was 2 Senate runoff races that had to happen in Atlanta, and which meant that the final 2 seats in the Senate were up for grabs. The Democrats won both of those, and there's a sports tie into this as well, because one of the sitting senators was actually a minority owner, but 49% owner of the Atlanta Dream women's NBA team. And she was running for the Republicans. Kelly Loeffler is her name. Her team, the team that she is an owner of, all campaigned on behalf of her rival, which is a very remarkable situation, because the power in American sports rests with the owners. You can effectively sack players and not pay up their contracts. It's a really weird situation where players' contracts are so weak, and the players' unions have been traditionally so weak or disinterested in getting proper rights for their workers, that you can sack a player and not pay up the rest of the money unless the money is written in as guaranteed. So those women were literally risking jobs campaigning in this election against the owner of their team, and she lost. And they were wearing the Black Lives Matter t-shirts in the aftermath of the game and celebrating the victory of her rival. So that was another little subplot of what was going on in just a wild 24 hours in American politics. And this obviously matters because loads of people in this part of the world have taken their lead from the playbook that Trump uses and from the playbook Trump supporters use in stoking up fear and division and hatred. And so, while we're all watching this as a TV spectacle, we just need to be careful that the language that's used there is creeping into our politics too. So, yeah, pretty interesting 24 hours.
Yeah, to say the least. And as I say, it's probably going to continue over the course of today, over the next couple of days. And we're going to chat about maybe what happens with the NFL this weekend. What happens if there's even the hint of an NBA level of protest this weekend. It'll be very interesting to see what would happen on that level, because it's going to be all eyes on the NFL to see their response now this weekend as well. We are turning our attention to what's happening in the world of sport, though. Phil Egan, a very good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you doing?
Much happening?
Well, I suppose as events were unfolding in Washington last night, the Manchester Derby was going on at the same time, and Manchester City really starting to show their form there. Obviously won against Chelsea on Sunday and still on course to win a fourth League Cup in a row under Pep Guardiola. They beat United 2-0 at Old Trafford in the second of the semi-finals. John Stones continuing his comeback to form. He scored the first goal early in the second half, and Fernandinho wrapped it up in the last 10 minutes. So Pep Guardiola's side will face Jose Mourinho's Tottenham in the final in April. Means United have lost 4 semi-finals in the last 12 months. I know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said after the game it wasn't a psychological thing, it was just the fact that they're facing better teams when they get to the latter stages of the competitions. As I said, last night's win for City came off the back of that game against Chelsea, so things looking ominous maybe for City's rivals in terms of the Premier League, because they certainly have hit form. Ruben Dias was man of the match last night, and more talk of Lionel Messi joining City next season, because one of Barcelona's presidential candidates, Agustí Benedito, said yesterday Messi is most likely to leave this summer when his contract expires. So there has been a lot of talk that City could sign Messi. Obviously it would tie into Messi then maybe playing for New York City in the MLS, obviously New York City owned by City owners as well. And speaking of MLS, Phil Neville could be off to manage Inter Miami, who are part owned by Neville's former teammate, Manchester United teammate David Beckham, obviously a friend of Neville as well. Now, they've approached Neville about becoming their next manager, which would mean his role as Team GB's women's manager at this year's Olympics could be in doubt. We know he's going to step down as England boss when his contract ends in July, which is obviously the same month that he's due to take charge of that Team GB team for the Olympics. But he might have to step down from that role if he wants to take the Inter Miami job. Republic of Ireland international Louise Quinn came up with the winner for Fiorentina last night. They beat AC Milan 2-1 to book their place in the final of the Italian Women's Super Cup. Louise Quinn popping up with a second half winner. Fiorentina will play Serie A leaders Juventus in Sunday's final. The PGA Tour resumes today with the Century Tournament of Champions in Hawaii. Rory McIlroy obviously not involved. Tyrrell Hatton as well. They're the only 2 players inside the top 10 who won't be involved this week. And today's racing at Clonmel, subject to course inspection in the next few minutes. Now, as of yesterday, the ground there was deemed fit for racing, but obviously a lot of frost overnight, so we don't know if it'll go ahead. If it does, the 7-race card will get underway at 10-1.
Phil, we've been chatting over the last couple of days about how Manchester City's performance against Chelsea was this sort of statement performance where Manchester City are sort of back. Last night doesn't really do anything to dissuade people of that opinion.
No, Ruben Dias, he was so impressive. And obviously all the talk is about John Stones, but it's no coincidence John Stones' form has improved playing alongside Ruben Dias. And City have a defender who is still obviously only 23, but a guy that enjoys defending. You could see he made several blocks last night, celebrated those blocks as if they were goals. And, you know, to defenders, blocks are as important as goals. And obviously as well, the threat that he has in the opposition penalty area, both of City goals came from set pieces. Now, United have been vulnerable from set pieces in recent seasons, but Diaz is a handful at both ends. But it just does look ominous for the rest of the Premier League and the Premier League title race, that obviously a lot of the talk has been about City or Liverpool and United obviously meet at Anfield on the 17th. We know United can go top if they get a draw or a win against Burnley next week, but if City win their 2 games in hand over Liverpool, they'd go ahead of them. And if you look at City's next 6 fixtures, they're very winnable games before they go to Anfield. And the feeling would be I would think that if City get ahead, if they get out in front and get top of the Premier League, they're going to be very hard to reel in, because they just look very efficient at the moment as well. They're not conceding goals, holding onto the ball. Obviously, Pep Guardiola said after the game, like Solskjaer has said as well, because City and United were involved in the latter stages of European competitions last season, both missed. They had a week later than the other teams, so very little pre-season. Now they're starting to find their form, but yeah, and the talk of Messi as well just means that City, you think back to the day they lost 5-2 to Leicester. It was also the same day they announced that Ruben Diaz was going to join the club, and I know he was involved for the Tottenham game, which they lost, but they've improved so much. They're not scoring as many goals, but they don't need to, because they're not conceding goals.
Yeah, very good point. Philippe, thanks a million. It is 7:46 on this Thursday morning. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Let's show you what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. We are live as ever until 10 o'clock this morning. We'd love to hear from you. You can tweet us at Off the Ball, or you can comment on the stream below if you happen to be watching on YouTube. Andy Mitten is standing by. We'll get to him momentarily. The sports page is coming your way at 8:05. Aishling Sheridan joining us from down under at 8:15. And sports vaccines coming up at 8:30. Which sports fans should get the vaccine first? We'll be telling you at 8:30. John Duggan will be talking about his brand new column at 9:25, getting stuck into the NFL wildcard weekend at 9:15. Joe Molloy's golfers to watch at 9:05. And Paris Saint-Germain and Kevin Doyle from 9:30. So a packed couple hours. We are going to Andy Mitten right now, though. Good morning to you, Andy.
Good morning.
So this performance for Manchester United last night, was it a sort of realisation that Manchester City are still that bit ahead of them, or do you expect a little bit more from Manchester United and that they perhaps underperformed just a tad?
I said yesterday I'd be pleasantly surprised if Manchester United beat and knocked out City last night. City have still got a better squad than United. I think they're favourites to win the Premier League for a reason. I thought the first half was pretty engrossing between two very good teams doing what they were doing, and City was superior in the second half. Disappointing for United to concede 2 goals from set kicks. Disappointing too to go out of another semi-final, because a trophy will really give United a lift. The players, the fans, the manager, who I think needs something for the improvement which is made. And disappointing night for Manchester United. If you lose your derby game, if you're any club in the world in a semi-final, then it's not a good night. But it was the first defeat in 7 for United. League form has been excellent. If the league finished today, United have got a better points per game average than any other team. I still don't think United will win the league this year. I've never expected that. So it's been a pleasant surprise to be in a title race and to start looking out for the results of other teams when I'm not doing my professional objective job. And I think the form has been good. The football's been good. And just a bit of a blow to be defeated by City, who have been the most dominant team in that competition. I was at the previous round for both of the teams. I was at Goodison, I was at the Emirates for City against Arsenal, sat right behind their substitutes, and I looked at that bench and I thought, City have got a really strong bench. Now, United have got a decent squad as well, but there's still some way to go. And as long as that way to go is something which Ole Gunnar Solskjaer can achieve, then I think fans will be okay with that.
Andy, can I bring you back to just a period of time where at Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp lost a bunch of big games, whatever, finals and semi-finals for a couple of seasons. It struck me that at that point, losing those games, while it really annoyed him and it didn't seem great to the fans, what they had was a clear sign of progress. And it struck me that when just listening to you there, that Manchester United fans have in recent seasons experienced the winning of trophies when Mourinho won a lot of trophies. And I wonder, would you part winning some trophies for a sense that actually you're title contenders again?
I think winning trophies is part of the improvement and being title contenders again. I've enjoyed been part of a title race in the last month because I didn't expect it, especially with the poor start to the season, which Manchester United had. And you start seeing West Brom celebrate at Anfield and puts a spring in your step. And football should be doing things like that. I'm sure Liverpool fans would be exactly the same if it was the other way around. Or when Southampton beat Liverpool. It's a pleasant surprise. But you mentioned before me that City are looking pretty ominous. And they are. And they're title winners. And they've got the experience of being title winners. I think a trophy would definitely help United. The players lifting a trophy. The idea of fans being at Wembley. And United can still go for the FA Cup, still go for the Europa League. And I believe they should go for both because there's no harm done in winning trophies.
Well, sorry, and look, I don't mean to labour the point, but obviously Van Gaal won trophies as well. My concern would be that, like, if I was in Solskjaer's situation right now, I would be putting out as weak a team as I needed to in the Europa League to make sure that I put all my eggs in the basket of the Premier League, and that I don't in some way have a sense of false dawn by winning. So Mikel Arteta won a trophy last year, and I don't know if the Arsenal fans look back at that as like, yeah, this is great. We've got this manager now, and actually that was a bit of a false dawn too.
Yeah, I don't agree with you. I think that United should be going to win the FA Cup, should be going to win the Europa League. There's a big squad there with plenty of players. It's not a squad that's had a lot of injuries this year. United's been quite fortuitous there. But your point about Van Gaal winning a trophy and Mourinho winning trophies, or titles as he called them, and he included the Community Shield in that, it's absolutely right. And ultimately it wasn't good enough. It needed to be combined with genuine title challenges. And there is one this year, or at least there is at the moment. We're not even halfway through the Premier League season yet. But United finished 32 and 33 points behind the champions in the last 2 years. They're now ahead of both. I don't expect that to be the case at the end of the season, but I'll enjoy the ride while it happens. So as long as this January is not as bad as last January when United lost 4 different games, feels good for your team to be in contention at the top of a really tight league. Yes, Liverpool and City have both dropped more points, but United have won a lot more points as well. Admittedly, against a poor start to last season. And you might say that Jose Mourinho got 81 points, and he absolutely did. But the football was terrible towards the end of his time, as it was under Van Gaal. And those 81 points, from October onwards in that season, United was so far behind City. So it should be exciting. I get the point from the accountants wanting to be in the top 4 in the Champions League. But for what? To be knocked out by a German team sponsored by a fizzy drink or energy drink or whatever it is. You cannot be going to Wembley and seeing your team win a trophy. I grew up watching United in the 80s winning the FA Cup, and it meant the world. And to win the Europa League, it isn't the Champions League. But United don't have a team to win the Champions League at the moment, because if they would have done, they would have come out of that group stage. To go to Gdansk in May, 30,000 United fans. It's going to be difficult to get there. There's decent teams there. And he's got to overcome this semi-final hoodoo, which is now becoming a bit of an issue. Ole Gunnar says it's not a psychological issue, but the more it goes on, the more it will become one.
The thing that's happened with, I guess, teams that have struggled in a particular area over the last few years, I'm talking about Liverpool and Manchester City here, that they've gone out and they've signed a central defender who has made a world of difference, from Virgil van Dijk to Ruben Dias, who looks every bit worth the value they put into him. Does that give you hope that Manchester United can splash a bit of cash in the central defensive area and get some success over the next, 2 windows maybe? Because it's quite obvious at this point that maybe a left-sided centre-back is exactly what they need at this point.
I think the manager feels that he needs 2 or 3 windows to keep bringing in the players to improve the squad. I think his record in the transfer market has been a decent one so far. Interesting that you mentioned Ruben Dias came from Benfica, United's best player, came from Sporting. So rather than the club's own youth systems, they're often going to Portugal for some of the best players. And Fernandes came a year ago and he transformed the team and he improved United significantly. What Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants is competition in every single position. Your point about the left-sided central defender, yeah, compared to City's defence last night, United's wasn't at the same level. And had we spoke a month ago, that point would have been more pertinent. But Eric Bailly actually did well. He was unlucky not to start last night. Am I convinced that we're looking at the next Vidic and Ferdinand with any of the United central defensive partners? No, I'm not. But I thought that Lindelof and Maguire actually did well in the first half against the best player in the league, Kevin De Bruyne. They were finding space in front of United's defence and pulling those defenders forward to the point that they didn't really know who they were marking. And that was pretty nervous to watch as a Manchester United fan. I'm not convinced that a central defender is United's immediate priority at the moment. Watching the game last night, I thought this team needs a centre forward. Cavani could have made a difference last night, but City were worthy of their win. And it is disappointing. I spoke to Ole Gunnar the day before the game and asked him about the improvements against City. And they've been slight, and these are small mercies. But this is where United have come from. The mighty have fallen, but I think that United are improving and are on the way back. Can they get back to the top? Well, we need to see if that's going to happen.
Should Bailly have started last night?
He's been doing well. I think the risk, and he's been doing well in that competition too. And when he's fit, he can be a top class player. I think the feeling about him is he's been injury prone. Obviously, doesn't want to be injured, and there's always a mistake in him. So when he deserved to start against Tottenham in that big game, 3 or 4 minutes into the match, he'd made a mistake, and he's got to, I think, prove himself to the manager that he should be starting in the biggest games. Although I'm contradicting myself because against Chelsea last year away from home, he started in a 3-man defence and he was one of the best players on the pitch.
So there's an option there, and it looks like there's going to be a window of opportunity for him now over the next while. And yet he picked Lindelof last night. So it's clear that either they don't think he's physically able to do 4 games in a row, or they still have the feeling that they want Lindelof to emerge as the partner.
Lindelof's had issues with a back injury throughout the season, and he's played through pain. And he started this season pretty poorly and was quite rightly criticised for his poor form. And then I think he had a better spell alongside Maguire. This United team actually concedes a lot of goals. That's because they take more risks going forward. I mean, fans have got to think, what do you want? I remember clearly under Van Gaal and Mourinho, fans saying, I just want my team to entertain again. I think this team are pretty entertaining. But what comes with that is the risks. It's going behind in every away game, which is bizarre, but then coming back to win all those games, really exciting finishes. It's far more enjoyable than towards the end of Van Gaal's time, than towards the end of Mourinho's time. Do I think that Lindelof will be shortlisted for the Defender of the Year award this year? No, I don't. And when you look at Virgil van Dijk, how he transformed Liverpool, that maybe shows what an absolute top world-class defender can do, like Vidic did with United when he paired with Ferdinand. So I think you're asking questions in the right area. And I'm also thinking that United spent more on Harry Maguire than any defender in the world. He's United's captain. I would like to see him be more vocal. But he's been a good signing. But I'm not saying great signing. I'm saying good signing. And I think you can argue the case for quite a few of the United players. They're doing all right. But if you're going to be trophy winners, you've got to be doing better than all right.
On TV last night, we had Roy Keane as a pundit. He said Bruno Fernandes has had great praise, and over the last few months he's been compared to players like Cantona, but Fernandes didn't really do much tonight. Top players turn up in big occasions. That's what you have to do to win trophies. Does he have a point, Andy?
He absolutely has a point. And look at those biggest games what Roy Keane played in. I remember him playing for the Republic of Ireland I think it was in Portugal, and just thinking, wow. I remember him in Turin for Manchester United, exactly the same. He's got a point. If you're going to be one of the best players in the world, you've got to perform in some of those biggest matches. And Fernandes, it was all right last night, but all right is nowhere near good enough. De Bruyne was far more effective than Bruno Fernandes was. I think Bruno had 4 shots, but I thought United in attack were pretty disappointing, especially in the second half. And when they did have chances, I think Fred put a ball through to Marcus Rashford. Maybe he could have made more of it. And Ole Gunnar talks about these fine margins all the time. It's true, but when you lose 4 consecutive semi-finals, you've got to start making the fine margins work in your favour, because people will quite rightly ask questions.
Solskjaer brought Roy in to speak to some of the younger players. Andy, has he?
Yeah, I wrote this the other day in a piece. Roy has been in to speak to the kids, not the first team players. That's what I understand. And Ryan Giggs has been in as well, and I think that's good. You've got these former world-class players who live very close to the training ground and are close friends with the likes. Roy and Nicky Butt are good mates, and for Nicky to get Roy to come in and to speak to the youngsters and to say, look, this is how it is. This is the reality of it. Statistically, most of you are not going to make it at this club, so you've got to be as well prepared you can be to become professional footballers. I don't think any of the players walk out of that meeting with Roy or with Ryan Giggs or with some of the other players who've come in and think that was a waste of time. It's absolutely good. And I hear lots of good stuff about Roy around South Manchester, which just doesn't get reported, where, he gets invited to a local charity, or one of them was Altrincham Football Club, for example, and they needed money, and he turns up and he didn't ask for money, and he just stayed as long as he was wanted. I find him forever a fascinating figure, and if he can help Manchester United, and I know he's good mates with Ole Gunnar as well, put all these ingredients into the pot, add Darren Fletcher into it as well. He's now coaching with the first team. I'm optimistic about that. I think it's a good decision. Let's see if it is.
What kind of a coach do you think Fletcher's going to be? What will he bring?
I think he's a complete geek who's obsessed by statistics, and is the only player at United for a long time, would pull me up on articles that I've written showing that he's reading lots and lots. And I think Jamie Carragher was like that at Liverpool. He rang 442 magazine up to inquire when his subscription was up, because he'd not received the latest issue, like a day after it had come out. And I like that in a footballer. I like the fact that they love their profession, they love the sport, they've got a capacity and a want to learn and learn and learn. Darren Fletcher's always been a big fan of Spanish football. He's been over to Spain several times to study Spanish football. I think he speaks really well. He's turned down loads of media because he's really good at media, because he prefers to be a coach. He needed his time out. And I'm not talking out of turn. I spoke to him on Thursday. He needed his time out after finishing at Stoke, where things didn't work out for him. I think he needed to clear his head. And he came into United, first of all, with the kids. That's what they often do, bring players in to work with the kids, just to see if they've got a feel for being there. Doesn't always work out with some of them. I know players who've been in there and read the Riot Act about, you've got to have heart, you've got to have passion, and the players are just like shaking their head going, don't patronise us. But other players like Fletcher have, I think, will fit in, and that's not to be a yes man. I mean, Darren played with Roy Keane. He's absolutely fine in putting his own opinions across and his own ideas. But a man who studies tactical systems from around the world, get him in there.
I did want to ask you, Andy, the transfer window is open, and one of our YouTube commenters is pointing out that there's a 15-day stretch in February. United have to play Sociedad, Newcastle, Sociedad, Chelsea and City. And as you were pointing out, sitting behind the Manchester City bench, it looks impressive. Do you expect any activity in the next 2 or 3 weeks?
I don't, and lose 4 matches and maybe there would be activity. I think if United's targets became available, they'd definitely move for them. I don't think those targets will become available. Maybe 1 or 2 players might move on, but it's difficult moving players on huge salaries who are not playing. It will basically be them deciding, I need to play football. I think that'd be the right thing to do. Maybe younger player, but I'd be surprised if there's any movement. When I say a younger player, Moises Caicedo from Ecuador is someone who United scouted had talks about, and that was it. And I was reading like advanced talks about to happen. And my understanding is that he has several people saying that they represent him. That's why you've seen his name being linked to lots of other clubs, because one of those agents has got to try and get the deal over. I'm not sure which of them has got the mandate to do it. He's a 19-year-old central midfielder, but I've not been told for certain. Like I was with Ahmad Diallo and also Facundo Pelestre, I was told absolutely certain we want these players. And I wrote that. And then when they don't sign the next day, you said, this is happening. When's it happening? Whoa, wait a minute. Transfers can take more than 12 hours. And then there's other players who I mentioned recently, Ollie Watkins for Aston Villa, and that never came out, but United wanted to be kept abreast of developments with him and decided not to move for him in the end. That happens a lot in football. The manager and the people around him are making decisions. But to your main point, I don't think we'll be seeing another 60, 70 million Bruno Fernandes style signing this transfer window. I might be wrong, but I just can't see it at the moment.
Andy Mitten, great stuff as ever. Thanks a million for taking the call this morning.
Thank you.
Cheers. Andy Mitten there, reflecting on the defeat against Manchester City last night in the Carabao Cup. It is 6 minutes past 8 on this Thursday morning. Pack show still to come for you. We'll be talking golf after 9 with Joe Molloy. John Duggan will be in studio, and we've got Cian Fahey on the NFL up next. Cavan star Aishling Sheridan, one of the 14 women playing in the AFL this year, chats to us live from Melbourne. That's coming up right after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
Ferguson has a knack for seeing maverick and, kind of creative genius and sort of letting it flow.
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists. The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Follow the leader, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV, the world's best-selling plug-in hybrid, is now available with 0% finance and a free home charge point worth €800. Leading the charge in plug-in hybrid technology, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. Book a test drive at your local dealer today. Mitsubishi, drive your ambition. Terms and conditions apply. See MitsubishiMotors.ie. Lending criteria applies. This is a hire purchase agreement provided by Bank of Ireland Finance.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. It is 8 minutes past 8 on this Thursday morning. We'd love to hear from you. You can tweet us at Off the Ball. You can comment on the YouTube stream as well. Jay Howard on YouTube says, Martial not good enough. We need a top-class number 9. If you've just joined us, you've missed Andy Mitten reflecting on last night's Manchester derby. It'll be up on our YouTube channel very shortly. Let's tell you what's happening in the sports pages then this morning. We will start with otbsports.com, and it's John Duggan's column that leads the way on the live, the latest edition of otbsports.com. As you can see, there's Manchester United reaction there as well. I'm always pulling my hair out watching Luke Shaw. That is Kevin Doyle talking about him. Enjoy this weekend. It might be the last. Keith Wood on rugby's perilous state. Not looking good for rugby at the moment. Maybe this will be the last bit of competitive action we have for a while this weekend. Ireland goalkeeper Mark Travers, meanwhile, leaves Bournemouth for Swindon on loan. And the latest from Phil Healy on Tokyo. Athletes will do anything to get to the Olympics, and that is from OTB AM yesterday. You can get that podcast back on the OTB Sports app. The Irish Times this morning leads with the Manchester derby. Their headline is Stones and Fernandinho deliver in derby to send City to another final. Meanwhile, the Daily Telegraph leads with John Stones celebrating. That's for you, Colin. Stones bell tribute as City reach yet another final. The Irish Daily Star goes with the headline Rolling Stones with a picture of John Stones. No satisfaction for Ole's Reds as John fires City into final. Sean Kavanagh, meanwhile, says Dubs have to be a factor in some of their retirements. It's been a retirement today, basically, from the Mayo camp this week. Next up, we have the Irish Sun. Hailstones is their headline. John Raines as Ole is sunk. Meanwhile, Covidiot Luka, so sorry, that is Luka Milivojevic. And Quick Nick kick for Big Nick is the headline on his Apoel departure. That is the Irish Sun. The Irish Mirror. Stones Rocks is their headline. Rare goals from Stones, and Fernandinho puts City into their 4th straight League Cup final and gives Solskjaer his 4th semi-defeat. Next up, we have the Irish Daily Mail. Boss for hire is their headline. McCarthy keen for a new role after a shock exit. And United hit by Stones is their top line on Manchester United against Manchester City. And plan to give Olympic stars priority for vaccine, writes Mark Gallagher. Next up in The Guardian, Olympics vaccine plan. IOC seeks athlete jabs in second wave so games can go ahead. And Stones rocks United to clear final route. That is The Guardian this morning. The London Times then goes with Stones makes it 4 in a row. John Stones there wheeling away in celebration on the back of the London Times this morning. The Herald, City in lead to get messy. Barcelona presidential candidate hints at new camp exit as Pep's men win Derby semi. And on the inside there, non-Dublin All-Ireland winners rarer, as a few people have stepped away this week. City at front of queue, says the Irish Independent, with Messi set for Barcelona exit. It is their main story on the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. Meanwhile, Carberry progressing well as led his recovery from injury going to plan, writes Cian Tracy. And Cats legend Carey tipped to take reins with Carlo Hurlers, that is DJ Carey, tipped to get into inter-county management. Of course, he has previously managed IT Carlo, so there's a natural connection there to the county. The Racing Post, DJ in a spin, take on Masters champion in Hawaii opener. We'll be chatting to Joe about that a little bit later on. And finally, the Irish Examiner this morning. Stones the hero as City book Spurs final date. Tommy Martin's column, meanwhile, Premier League on second thoughts. Let's not go there. It is a silly play. So that is the sports pages this morning. Ger, do you, by everything that's going on with Manchester United, the idea that, listen, they're one defender away potentially from being a top-class contender, from being able to properly contend week in, week out against a team like Manchester City?
I don't know. I think if, look, again, obviously we were watching the shenanigans in Washington, so I didn't see the ebb and flow of the match. Certainly there was, in the highlights, there's a cut and thrust that Manchester City have that Manchester United don't have just at the moment in midfield. And again, we have to assume that Pogba is leaving at the end of the season. So there's still a reconstitution of their midfield that needs to happen, as well as a centre-back partnership you can hang your hat on. And I'm not sure that Harry Maguire is going to be half of a world-class centre-back partnership, because the person beside him needs to be better than him, if that's going to be the case. So there are significant weaknesses within that team. But you know, you've got to go back to the fact that they can go on streaks. They've got a potential to be the third best team in the Premier League at the moment. Like, that's where they are. If they overachieve and finish second and add a lot of talent, then they're doing the right thing. I have to say I disagree with Andy about the winning of trophies. I do feel like football thinks of trophies as some kind of holy grail that solves all of your issues. It didn't work for Mourinho. It wasn't a sign of progress. It hasn't worked really for Mikel Arteta. It wasn't even survival for Louis van Gaal. He got sacked in the elevator in the aftermath of winning the FA Cup. So, if you think back to Liverpool starting under Klopp, they lost a load of big games, but they were clearly getting there. And I think the failure drove them on at that point, as opposed to, look, we won a trophy. That's a really successful season because we won a trophy. It's like, a successful season is actually legitimately competing to become the champions of your country. And that, trophies fall out of that. You build a team that can win the league. That's a team that will also be able to compete in the Champions League. And that's what happened with Liverpool. They ended up winning the Champions League before they won the league. So look, I think they're heading in the right direction, but let's cool the jets on their title contenders just yet. They're not. Like, it's very early on in the season. Manchester City have to put their run together. They're on their run now. They're starting to put their run. Aguero is coming back. Like, if they reel off 10, 15 games in a row, which we know they can, is it really a title race because you were close to them in January, or were you just close to them in January because they hadn't put their run together yet? So let's wait and see.
On the trophies point, I guess it's a different situation for every trophy that you win. Like some trophies you could look at as little strokes of luck, I guess. Maybe with the Arsenal one, it's actually a really good example last year that maybe everybody came in after the pandemic a little bit cold. There was maybe a bit of still the remainder of a new manager bounce coming from Arsenal. They kind of caught Manchester City in the semi-final. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was in unbelievable form. You could say, okay, that's a little bit of an aberration. But for Manchester United, if they were to go on and win this year's League Cup, I know it's all over now, but it would have involved beating Manchester City last night, and it would have involved beating Tottenham Hotspur in the final. That would be a real sign of progress, beating those two teams in two big games.
Would it though?
I think so. I think it would be a real sign.
What if
the home stretch?
What if they finished fifth? What if they won the League Cup and finished fifth?
So League Cup plus third, for example. I think that's probably what we expect them to do. Is it not? Do we not expect them to finish third at this point?
I don't know. I mean, I still think that Mourinho could finish ahead of this team. I still think Liverpool and City could finish ahead of this team. So I'm not sure. I don't think it's guaranteed. I don't think they're the third best team automatically at the moment. They're in good form, but how did they get on against Spurs? Let's wait and see. I think
that's my point. That's exactly it. It would have involved beating that Tottenham Hotspur team again. It would have involved beating Manchester City last night. That I think really.
So that didn't happen, right? That didn't happen. Let's say they win. No. Let's say they win the FA Cup though, because there's still a chance that they might win the FA Cup. Let's say they win the FA Cup and they finish third or they get 82 points. And is it automatically a sign that things are progressing, or is that just a random sequence of matches where you end up winning a trophy? I think
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Is that not every trophy win is a random sequence of results, and not every trophy win is a marker for progress. I think, though, if Manchester United had won last night and had beaten Tottenham Hotspur, I think the way the season had aligned, that would have been a true sign of progress for Solskjaer, and they've missed that. I think a League Cup this year would have meant so much for Manchester United, and they could have won an FA Cup and the League Cup this year, and the League Cup might have meant more because they've beaten two of the best teams in the last two rounds. They could beat a load of crap teams for the first couple of rounds of the FA Cup, and they could get lucky in the last couple of rounds, maybe a little bit like Arsenal last season. I'm not saying they were fully lucky, but as you said, as time goes by, we've seen that maybe Arsenal's form didn't represent actually being one of the best teams in England last year. But I think if Manchester United had won last night and had won the final, I think that path had shown a trophy, and that's why they've missed out on a trophy now, and they've missed out on actually showing the country that they have actually got to a point where they're one of the best teams around. So I think they actually go hand in hand.
No, I don't. I think that causation and I think that they're not connected in the way you're explaining it. I actually think that if they finish second this season, it's relevant whether or not they won the League Cup or the FA Cup or the Europa League. If they finish second and push Man City or Liverpool all the way to the end of the season, that's far more important for them when it comes to next season and thinking about themselves and their self-identity, rather than winning a trophy now and thinking, well, life is great, we won a trophy, we're only in the game for medals. I actually think that the winning of the trophies will come after you have a team that is really good, and their team is not good enough at the moment to get through the semi-finals. And so even the team wasn't good enough under Mourinho, even though they won trophies. It was completely wrong. It was just this. Jared Houllier used to talk about winning 5 trophies, and ultimately that Liverpool team were never good enough. The Benitez team was good enough because it won a Champions League. A Champions League matters. A league title matters. The Europa League doesn't really matter in the long run. Nobody looks back and goes, "Oh, an astounding career! I won a Europa League title." It's like it is so lacking in prestige at this point. It's important, if you used it as a staging post. But Liverpool lost the Europa League final. It was actually better for them in the long run that they had that pain and suffering, because it drove them on. I think that we signify for a super club, right? For Aston Villa to win the League Cup, or for Aston Villa to win an FA Cup, that's fantastic. And in many ways, that's what Arsenal have become, a team who, we won the FA Cup. That's great. It's a great season. And maybe that's fair enough. But for a super club like Manchester United, it is irrelevant if you win the League Cup and the FA Cup and the Europa League, unless you're doing it with a team that is actually capable of competing for the Premier League, because that's the thing that matters.
Well, I disagree with you on your point on Liverpool, by the way. I think that there's no evidence to suggest that had they won that Europa League final, that they wouldn't have gone on the run that they currently are.
Except that they didn't.
I think you're reading into that.
They didn't win it. You're saying I have no evidence for an alternative view of history. What we actually know is that they then became one of the best teams, one of the most ruthless teams, that they learned from the experiences of losing those games. That, like, he went and he got a goalkeeper. He got a goalkeeper after he lost the Champions League final as well. Like, I need to fix this problem. And he fixed the problem. That's the evidence.
That's a fair point. I'll give you that. The Karius thing is a really good piece of evidence to suggest that actually losing games can sometimes help you. But I mean, that's part of improving. That's how you get to the point of actually winning the trophies. And so, I mean, at that time, Liverpool would have bitten your hand off for the Champions League. We do have to move on, though. We're going to be chatting to Aishling Sheridan very shortly. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Before we chat to Aishling, let's have a listen to Keith Wood chatting to Joe last night about the prospect of moving the Lions tour to the Northern Hemisphere this year.
What would interest you more? A trip down to South Africa, just the players on the plane, matches behind closed doors?
That won't happen.
Why won't that happen?
That won't happen because of the finances.
Okay, so if I took finances out of it for a second, which is obviously a pointless exercise, but would you prefer to, if you were as a fan on your armchair, I suppose, would you prefer to watch the players in South Africa behind closed doors, or South Africa coming up and playing in the likes of Croke Park with 10,000-20,000 there, just as a sporting spectacle for a second?
Yeah, as a spectacle, the more we've watched of sport over the last few months, sport needs fans. They need the fans in the ground. And we understand why they're playing, and we understand the rights and the money and everything that's needed for it. But for a game to have huge significance, for me, you need a full stadium. That's what's required. Equally well, I think we are putting our players' welfare in huge difficulty. Peaks and troughs in the season. They're being pulled from one competition to the next. They're trying to squeeze an extra bit of a competition in to keep the finances alive. It's understandable why, but I think it becomes incredibly difficult to get this Lions tour fully underway, be it down in South Africa or up here. What would I rather? I think the Lions is a touring side. That's what it was built around. I'm not even a fan of having a match prior to going, which I know that the plan is for a game against Japan. And I still am I'm properly upset for the fact that we can't get the leagues to be able to finish in time for a 1 in a 4 year period of time where the Lions can have a proper run in. And that doesn't happen irrespective of COVID. So I don't know what the solution is. And actually, they're all there given as options, but whichever one it is, it will be a poor substitute to what the Lions are. And I do think you need to protect what the Lions is as a brand, and you need to be able to have it sorted within an...
Keith Wood there on Wednesday Night Rugby last night. You can hear the full piece back on OTB Rugby or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find it on our YouTube channel right now as well. All right, it is 8:23 a.m. and Collingwood and Cavan star Aishling Sheridan is with us, I think. Good morning to you, Aishling. How are things?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thanks. So I presume you're out of quarantine and you're going about your life in Melbourne normally right now.
Yeah, we got out of quarantine Christmas Day. We were in Western Australia in Perth. So that's just where the flight brought us. And back now in Melbourne, back into training. And yeah, we're here set up in our new place and everything. So into the swing of things now.
So what was it, a flight 2 weeks before Christmas Eve or something like that? And then 2 weeks self-isolating, or how did that work?
Yeah, so we flew the 9th of December from Dublin, and then we had to go from London to Singapore, and then we had a night stay in Singapore where you kind of were self-isolating as well, like in a hotel there, and then Singapore to Perth. Again, like, you know, we just kind of knew we were going to Australia. We kind of didn't know where we were going, because the rules here, it depends on how much people is let into each state. So we landed in Perth, and straight away, you know, there were security guards when you got off the plane. You were literally being escorted like, you know, you were prisoners. You know, you couldn't have your phone out and you couldn't talk to anyone. And then you were like, you had to go answer questions. They told you the hotel you were staying in, and then escorted onto a bus, and then brought to your hotel, up to your room, lock the door, goodbye.
Wow.
But no, It actually wasn't too bad, to be fair. And then, so that was probably the 11th of December. So we did our 14 days and got out Christmas Day.
When did you find out where exactly you were going in Australia? It kind of sounds like you get on the plane and they're like, lucky dip.
So originally we were told we were landing in Adelaide, and then literally the night we were leaving, we just got an email to say that our flight has been changed to go to Perth. So literally just that day, really.
Right. Well, that's a bit wild, isn't it? Like it's you want to have a very open mind about this whole experience.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if we landed in Adelaide, we weren't getting out till Stephen's Day. So when we heard that was, I don't know what way the quarantine, I think you have to do 15 days in some states. So it actually worked out well then to go to Perth, and then we had friends and stuff there, so we were able to spend Christmas with them. So it was actually lovely.
So my geography is crap. I had to look it up there. Perth is the one city that's on the west coast, and the whole the east coast is where everything is. So it's not close.
No, so we got our 4-hour flight there Sunday from Perth to Melbourne, and then you have a 3-hour time difference as well. So it's a bit strange, in the one country there's change of time zones in literally everywhere. So then Perth is 3 hours behind. So than Melbourne.
And do you just finish Netflix in 2 weeks? Is that what you do for 2 weeks in your room with nothing else to do? It's like
Netflix, and I don't know, you have a lot of downtime, which in one way was actually kind of nice. And then we were very lucky. We got gym equipment and like some dumbbells, a bike. The AFL was able to give it to the AFLW players. So we were able to get programs and plans off our S&C, and that kind of kept us ticking over. And then you have Uber Eats as well, which you can literally order any food you want and it comes straight to your door, or coffee. So needless to say, there was an absolute bomb spent on Uber Eats, but it was worth it.
What is your go-to on Uber Eats then on Christmas Eve, for example?
Christmas Eve, so I probably got myself maybe 2 or 3 coffees. Just, I don't know why, I just, because they keep coming. And then I'd get myself a nice brunch, so maybe like sourdough, poached eggs, avocado, and then dinner. They actually put on like a kind of a Christmas dinner spread, so they had like turkey and ham and stuff for us. So I had that, and then whatever sweets I had going. I didn't have any celebrations or heroes, but something anyway to kind of feel like I was at home.
So you're in a hotel room in Perth, actually training essentially for the upcoming season, because they've got the gym equipment and they've got it into a hotel room on the opposite side of the country, and that's basically how you keep ticking over for the few weeks, I guess. Yeah, literally. So I probably was doing maybe 2 sessions a day, bar maybe the weekends. I kind of took them a bit easier, because when I kind of counted up the sessions, I was doing maybe a HIIT session and a strength session, or a bike session and a strength session. So you probably were actually doing more than you think, but it's because you've so much time, you're nearly probably doing too much. And then, so that kept me going. And then once we got out, we had a lot of running to catch up on. So that was not fun, but we got back into it, got the running done, ticked off the list over our Christmas break, because then we had like 10 days maybe to get more gym sessions and running sessions in just before we came back to training there Monday. And how quickly does that fitness build up post Christmas? Like, are you right into the swing of things now, where you're enjoying the training? I know you're only 3 weeks out from the start of the season at this point. Are you past the pre-season mode at this juncture? Yeah, so I suppose I kind of knew I was always going to be doing quarantine, and I've never not ran for 2 weeks. I've been very lucky when it comes to injury, touch wood. So I suppose I kind of knew that I wasn't going to get running for 2 weeks. So I did a lot of training leading up to heading out to Australia. Kind of built up the sessions, a lot of running sessions, and then I did a fitness test. We were back into our fitness test Monday. Did a lot better than last year, so I'm actually come out fitter, which is a surprise. But it's all good, and we're back into the swing of things, getting our skilled sessions, our training sessions, you won't find, I think there's 20 days till round 1, and so there'll be practice matches or challenge matches coming up, so it will actually fly. And how do you feel this year versus last year? Like that experience obviously stands to you. Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel a lot more confident. I suppose
I was kind of nervous about training on Monday because it was my first session back, and just getting, get the hands on the ball, get into the terminology. Like their terminology is completely different. As we would say sideline, it's the boundary. It's all offense, defense, not forwards and backs. So there's a lot of things they say that you're kind of there standing there for a second and like, oh, and then you catch it. But definitely feel a lot more confident. I suppose having last year was a massive help. And then skills base, it's actually better than I expected, but I'm still a little bit rusty in parts, but I still have 3 weeks. So I'm definitely okay. I was probably more worried than I should be, but all is okay so far.
What's the area of that part of Australia actually like to live in and work in? Will you get a chance to see a little bit of it this time?
Yeah, so we're actually living in St Kilda in Melbourne, and it is, I'd say, half of Ireland. So it's literally on the beach. You go walking down to get a coffee, and there's O'Neill shorts popping up everywhere, jerseys, GA tops. There's Jimmy O'Neill's, there's Irish places everywhere around. So definitely feel like I'm at home. And it's a lovely area, and the weather's lovely. We've the beach beside us, so probably because the season is actually coming quick enough. You only have your Sunday off, and then games will start on Sunday, so it'll be hard to kind of fit in time to go wherever. But some of our games might be interstate, which would be nice, because then it's always nice to fly to somewhere and play a game. It's just a different experience than driving in the car or on a bus. It's always nice because you get to see their stadium, their training grounds. So I think we've like Brisbane away and West Coast, which would be Perth again. So we'll be going back there. So yeah, that would be nice.
The big thing as well that a lot of professionals talk about is the downtime and the rest. It sounds like it's a nice part of the world to have to, rest and not do too much work. The beach is right there. It sounds like you've got all the facilities you need.
Yeah, like that's it. Because this week, I suppose I've been finding it quite tough on my body. We had a fitness test and training Monday, then gym and skills Tuesday. Tough enough training last night, so you train for maybe like 2 hours or more. So you'd be covering up to 10 kilometers or more in a training session. Gym and skills today, and that's only 4 days in, and I'm definitely finding it in my body. So to have the beach would be nice, because I'd probably go down there in the morning for a dip, use it kind of as like an ice bath, because I'm definitely finding it, I suppose, in my quads, because the kicking technique is a little bit different. You probably find it more so because it's definitely more straight on. So the body is definitely feeling it this week, but hopefully now come Sunday when it's our rest day, I'll kind of get a chance to kind of recharge the batteries and go again.
That's interesting. I haven't heard many people mention that before. So obviously you've been playing with round ball for a lot of the last few months with Cavan and stuff. So actually kicking a different shape ball, actually it takes a little bit of time to get used to on the body physically.
Oh, 100%. That's actually what we were talking about today with the coach, because it's that punt pass, you follow straight through with your leg. You don't have that kind of around the corner kick, as they call it. It's straight on, so you definitely find it more so in your quads, because you don't have your groins coming in to help with that kick. Like you definitely find it harder to kick as long as you would with a GAA ball. So even at training last night, taking set shots in front of the goals, I was finding it tough to get the power in my legs because my quads were feeling quite sore. But again, it'll all come with practice, and there's a really specific technique. We were talking with the coach today, not many GAA players follow through with the ball. Your hamstring or your leg only goes to a certain height. Whereas in AFL, the leg goes full up, like as if an Irish dancer would. It goes that high, they really, really follow through. They land on the kicking leg. So there's a lot of bits and technique that people probably don't know. You have to kick the ball a certain way for people to be able to catch it. If you kick it the wrong way, it can be so hard on your hands. People break fingers. There's a lot of emphasis on technique for kicking, picking up the ball, catching, hand passing, everything.
Can GA players learn anything from what you've learned technique-wise? Is it literally nothing you can apply to football? Like, so talking about the following through, the kicking style, is there good habits, I guess, that you've picked up that you can apply to Gaelic games?
Yeah, definitely. Even when you're following through with the kick, and landing on that kicking leg, I found that when I went back home to play football, and even taking frees at home, he kind of found it better because when you follow through, you actually get a little bit more distance and height with the ball, so especially for long range kicking. And also I found my opposite side hand pass had improved like immensely, that I'm that comfortable on it, like it was my good hand. Just because, you know, at every training session you spend maybe 10-15 minutes right hands, left hands, right foot's left foot. So yeah, like they've really emphasized the skills like that. And then I actually found it really helped me when I went home, because, you know, I was definitely getting more comfortable on both sides whenever it came to a situation that I didn't find myself stuck.
Is it true that Collingwood have this one club mentality as well, Aishling, that the men's team trains with the women's team on a regular basis?
Yeah, so just with COVID right now, we kind of have 2 gyms in the one facility. So we don't probably get to interact with the men's team really at all, and they might train during the day. But then there's also the netballers as well. So there's the men, the netballers, the women, and then there's the AFLW or the VFLW or VFL. So yeah, we would interlink with them a lot. But now during COVID times, it's just a little bit more strict. You know, we can't even train as a group yet. So we're training in groups of 10s just after the Christmas break. So everyone has to get a COVID test, return a negative result, and then we can go back to group training. So, but yeah, in previous years there has been.
And what is the situation with COVID at the moment? Are people wandering around with masks, or is it normal life?
Yeah, so when I was in Perth, like no mask anywhere, like it's completely normal. Like everything is just like previous to COVID. In Victoria or Melbourne, so you have to wear a mask indoors. And then I think there's a limit on 15 people in one room. I'm not 100% sure on that, but in terms of cases, like I think they had 0 cases today. So especially in Australia, they've been saying like any COVID cases they've had has been people in quarantine. So they've actually kept it well under wraps. You know, and the masks, like there really is no fear of COVID here. And especially in Western Australia, I found like, you know, it nearly wasn't even talked about because it was just like, it was never there.
Yeah, it had been handled. One question for me on like the whole decision-making process to go and the first time and then the difference between the second time. It sounds like you're having the crack and it's like a brilliant thing to do. You know, it's a job, but it's also seeing the world. It's making you a better athlete. It's life as a professional. Are there any downsides?
I suppose being away from family, it is tough, and especially now, like none of my family can come over to see any of my games. So you would, well, I suppose I'm very lucky. There's other Irish girls here, and I'm living with an Irish girl, Sarah Rowe from Mayo. So like we have that sense of family, which is nice. And I suppose people always, you know, say to me, "Oh, you're living the life," and you know it looks amazing, and it is. But then there also is a lot of pressure which comes with it. You know, you want to get selected for round 1. You want to be performing. There's literally stats for everything in your game. So you could, as soon as the game is going on, you can look up a player. You can look up Aishling Sheridan, how many times she has touched the ball, caught the ball, and you know, there's a lot of pressure like that. And then obviously, you know, wanting to keep your spot because the 16 players tug out or started, and then you've only 4 other players or 4 or 5 other players which can rotate on. The rest, no, you can't. So there still is there is a lot of pressure that comes with it. But overall, no, it is amazing. And like to even be out here, like so grateful, and you know, be surrounded by such good people and such a good club. It really is amazing. So I'm really counting my blessings.
So you expect more of the Irish women to head out there over the coming seasons? The way the seasons dovetail seems to work perfectly.
Yeah, if the season probably goes the way it is, I suppose it works. It's the best of both worlds for us because we get to play our AFLW season and we're coming home maybe in time for championship. But now I know the way GAA might be changing, we may possibly be missing championship. So again, you know, that question will have to be put up for all the Irish, you know, which is more important, the sport you grew up playing or to go out and play AFLW. And I suppose that's everyone's, you know, everyone will have a different opinion or a different option. But right now it does work well for us. You know, you get your 6 months, 6-7 months in Australia and then 6-7 months at home. But it's hard to know because I know Australia's been very strict with international travel, and it is very difficult for clubs to get Irish girls out here and very expensive. So it'll be interesting to see how the next few years go.
One other thing then, Aishling, you mentioned there that you're 20 days out from the start of the season. I think Carlton is your first game. Do you have an expectation as a team or a goal as a team? Are you targeting the finals this year?
Yeah, so we made it to the semi-finals last year and lost out by 2 points. There was a lot of mistakes made in that game, but with Carlton coming up round 1, so it's the first game of the season, it's the round opener, and Carlton and Collingwood are 2 of the biggest rivals. So I imagine, there will be that pressure on, both teams will want to win. There's a lot of rivalry going back years and years. It was the girls telling me, they hate Carlton as much as Carlton hates Collingwood. So, we'll obviously want to be going in there, getting off to a win. Just get our season off to a good start and hopefully, get one step further than we did last year. But I suppose we'll have to just take it every game as it comes and see how that goes.
Well, very best of luck with it, Aishling. Hope the season goes well for you. Thanks many for taking the call this morning.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Aishling Sheridan there, star of Collingwood AFL team, and of course Cavan star as well. We should tell you about what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. We've got OTB Gold from 1 o'clock, Jerry Eisenberg on Muhammad Ali. 3 o'clock, State of the Union. 4 o'clock then is a retro panel caring for the sports person. Vincent Hogan, David Matthews and Diarmuid Ling are on that one. At 6 o'clock then, OTB Golds, Declan Murphy on his book Centaur. And then from 7 o'clock, as it is every single weekday evening, OTB is live. And you can get all that stuff on the OTB Sports app. John Duggan, how are things?
I want to jar yourselves.
Yeah, good. So Thursday morning is John Duggan column time. What are you penning this week? I hear there's some very accurate predictions in there.
Well, it's a sporting crystal ball. I watched your chat with interest over Christmas, yourself, Ger, Nathan and Adrian. And for my first column of the year, which I will publish every Thursday on otbsports.com and on the OTB app, I've gone for some predictions, so I can reveal some of them now if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Kerry, you going to win the Football All-Ireland, Don?
Yes, they are. Correct prediction. So we're 1 from 1. That's absolutely 100% going to happen.
Kerry people are sickened. They are so sickened by Dublin's dominance over the last few years. This is the aristocrats of the game. Kerry more All-Ireland football titles than anybody else, but absolutely sickened by the 6 in a row. But Dublin are going to be beaten at some stage, and if there's one team that is equipped to beat them, I think it's Kerry, because natural talent means something, and Kerry have the natural talent. And I think at 9-2, 4-1, I think Kerry. Like, you could look at this 2 ways. You could say, okay, a team will beat Limerick and Dublin will win, or a team will beat Dublin and Limerick will win. And I think Limerick will win the hurling, but I think Kerry will win the football.
I don't know. I think you might be pandering to poor Owen here, trying to ease him gently. And while the rest of the world is aflame, you want to give the young man some confidence that it's okay. Come on out. Don't hibernate the entire winter. Come on. Just be a part of this. Because I can't see any logical reason why Kerry are going to improve from a team that choked against, it turned out, not a great Cork side, a relatively mediocre Cork side this year. What's going to be different next year?
I think with Kerry, a lot for me when I think about Kerry's natural talent, and yes, they did not play well against Cork, but I'm thinking back to that 29 final, and now I know Johnny Cooper was sent off, but they really put it up to Dublin that day. And I do think that Kerry, of all the counties, have the natural talent. I can't see Mayo doing it. I can't see any of the northern counties doing it. And I just think that Kerry flagged in the last 10 to 15 minutes of that drawn final. But I do think that was a display that, and even in the first half of the replay, that Kerry were completely putting it up to Dublin. And just based on natural talent. And maybe that's an antiquated view. And maybe like when you look at the Cork hurlers, it's a view that's all going out of vogue. But I just think Kerry are, like with Clifford and that, they won the league. Now, these are all small things to say statistically, that they won 5 minors, that they won the league. But I do think that Kerry at Croke Park against the Dubs can do it.
I think that 2019 final, we have to, revise everything about it when you consider the pressure that the Dublin team put themselves under to be the first team in history that did 5 in a row. And it feels a little bit now, the new manager comes in, the shackles are off. They're trending back towards the swashbuckling side of the early noughties a bit more. And I actually feel like the gap between them and everybody else for the next couple of seasons is going to get bigger. I think
hold on. Sorry to interrupt you there, but just fair enough. You can make all the positive points about Dublin, and you're probably right. The likelihood is that they will kill everybody again this year, but you can't come at the argument from a pressure standpoint around 2019. Like, is that actually a better, more pressurised situation than these Kerry players going into their first ever All-Ireland final, into the blue sea of noise behind the hill? If you're Sean O'Shea kicking into that hill, is that really more pressure? You've won 4 All-Irelands in a row. You know exactly how to get over this.
Well, you don't. No one's ever done it. The great Kilkenny team fell apart in an All-Ireland final. They played Henry Shefflin on one knee because of the pressure of 5 in a row. It's like the single most iconic thing in Irish sport. There is nothing more important in Irish sporting history than a 5 in a row. Kerry themselves had not been able to do it with the greatest team of all time against an Offaly side who were good but not great. And all of a sudden that weight is so heavy, and you could see it in the way that Duggan approached that game. And look, I think it's far more that it was a shot to nothing for that Kerry team. Nobody expected them to perform.
I would be of the view that Kerry were under pressure because Kerry hated it. Kerry hate this. They hate the fact that Dublin won that 5 in a row because they've taken Kerry's mantle as the aristocrats of the game. So Kerry had to throw everything at that game because they knew that history would now change, and it has changed.
Yeah, but look, I think that, my point is that Dublin are getting better from that point. And I don't see Kerry progressing at the same rate.
Look, you're probably right, but I just think on 2019, if there was one team who had pressure on them and who succumbed to pressure more than the opposition that day, it was definitely Kerry. I think that the Dublin team, it was like water off the duck's back. I think when it comes to psychology, this Dublin team is the greatest sports team that potentially has ever existed in Ireland, and that is one thing you can never question with them. The pressure never gets to them, and I just never agree with those arguments that the Dubs are ever under any pressure. They're just
amazing. That's not true. They've frequently underperformed in all Ireland finals. They needed 2 own goals to get a draw against Mayo, but that wasn't their best performance.
And then they got subsequently better at it, and they've got better at it since then.
The pressure gets to them, and absolutely got to them. I think that that's the one chink in their armour, and they've had to work unbelievably hard at it. I think,
and they've got better at it, and I think that nobody can come anywhere close to them when it comes to dealing with that and the mental side of the game. That's the big challenge for everyone. For anybody who thinks that they're within the narcissist roar of Dublin, is actually getting the mental bit right. John, what else is in the piece? Any other quick fire predictions?
Well, the one thing I'm trying to do is anticipate things that I think were going to happen in the future before they happen. That's a lot of the time what I'm trying to do. So Kerry's one of those. I do think Limerick will win again. I think they'll win the hurling again. I'm so impressed with them in the final. They saved the best for last. Hurling is probably more open and competitive with the counties, but I do think Limerick are a team that don't lack hunger. They've got the discipline. John Kiley's a really good leader, and I think they're gonna go and do it again. I've gone for England to win the Six Nations. I think that's generally quite a widely held view. I talked about Rory yesterday. I think John Ram will win a major this year. I think Manchester City will win the Champions League. They're about 4-1. I think Diaz has been a massive addition. I think Aguero might have a final flourish in him. He's coming back to fitness. And Guardiola seems to have them beginning to motor and get a good blend between defence and attack. And with a lot of European elite clubs out of sync and out of form, I think City, with Borussia Mönchengladbach to negotiate, probably into the last 8 already, I think this is might be the season for them to do it. There's a horse called Burrows Saint. If he turns up in the Aintree Grand National, Willie Mullins trained horse, won the Irish Grand National in 2019. I think he's got a really big chance if he turns up. He's 20-1 Burrows Saint. And I think Ireland at the Olympics will win at least 3 medals. If the Olympics does happen, it'd be great to see it happening for hopefully health reasons, with the society the pandemic being under control, not financial reasons. But you got McClenaghan, you got Sunita Pusper, Rory and Shane, Kelly Harrington if she qualifies. A lot of chances there, even like in taekwondo, equestrian and rowing as well. So I think at least 3 medals. But Kerry and Limerick, anything else I've gone for? John Ram, to win a major. John Ram, to me, is the second coming in golf.
John Duggan, great stuff. Thanks again.
All right, guys.
Check out that piece on otbsports.com and make sure to download the OTB Sports app right now. We're turning our attention to the NFL postseason. Cian Fahey is with us. Good morning to you, Cian. We don't have Cian for the time being. We're going to get into this in just a moment, Ger. It's going to be quite interesting to see what does happen this weekend. Do we expect any sort of protest at the NFL that's going to be a little bit different to what we've seen in the NBA over the last couple of nights? Or last night, I should say.
I don't know. I don't know what the crack is with the NFL players. I think that a lot has to happen over the next 48 hours or so. I've seen Richard Sherman tweet this morning essentially the same line that the basketballers were saying. Imagine seeing people invade Capitol Hill in your lifetime and there be no physical response to it. It seems like this is not what would happen if different ethnic groups were invading Capitol Hill. We know that. We know that for a fact to be true. So even the way that this has been policed is going to be a huge story over the next couple of days as well. I'm very interested to see what level of protest, if any, there is from NFL teams. I presume that will kind of begin to get sorted out in the next 12 hours or so.
Yeah, we'll get into that with Cian in just a moment. But John Duggan, such a good broadcaster, we have to go to him twice on this Thursday morning. I forgot you've got a fresh sports bulletin right off the press for us, John.
It is. I can't touch the paper because it's so hot. It's so fresh. The fresh news that Clonmel is off today. The track is frozen. Good news for Manchester City fans, because I do think they're really beginning to hit a groove now. 2-0 win over Manchester United in the English League Cup semi-finals last night at Old Trafford. Defender John Stones with the first goal and Fernandinho with the second for City. Ruben Diaz, a really good performance. So they're going to play Spurs at the end of April, Manchester City. The entire Derby County squad will not be able to fulfil this weekend's FA Cup match against Chorley due to a COVID-19 outbreak. They will field players instead from their underage squads. You're speaking about the issues in America there and the NBA, and there was a joint statement issued last night by the players of the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat ahead of their NBA match. They did play the match, but this is the statement that the players issued. 2021 is a new year, but some things have not changed. We played tonight's game with a heavy heart after yesterday's decision in Kenosha. This decision was not to charge that police officer of the shooting of Jacob Blake, controversial decision in Kenosha that was in Wisconsin. And the statement continues, knowing that protesters in our nation's capital are treated differently by political leaders depending on what side of certain issues they are on, the drastic difference between the way protesters this past spring and summer were treated and the encouragement given to today's protesters who acted illegally just shows how much more work we have to do. We've decided to play tonight's game to try and bring joy to people's lives, but we must not forget the injustices in our society. We'll continue to use our voices on our platform to highlight these issues and do everything we can to work for a more equal and just America. The statement from the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat players, finishing with the hashtag Black Lives Still Matter. Golf-wise, the PGA Tour season resuming later today. The Century Tournament of Champions in Hawaii and Maui. Rory McIlroy passing this one out, but it does include the field of 42. The Masters champion Dustin Johnson and the US Open winner Bryson DeChambeau. And if you believe the back of the Irish Independent guys, Michael Verney of who would be a friend of OTB, writing that DJ Carey could be in line for a senior job with the Carlow Hurlers. The Kilkenny legend recently left Brian Cody's backroom team managing IT Carlow. They've done very well in Fitzgibbon Cup and DJ Carey. And if you think if he does well in Carlow, you'd have DJ, you'd have Henry, you'd have Eddie Brennan, a lot of contenders if and when Brian Cody does eventually decide to step down as Kilkenny hurling manager.
John Duggan, great stuff. Thanks a million. It is 8:52 a.m. on this Thursday morning. We can now go to Cian Fahey. How are you, Cian?
I'm in shock looking at Ger's mustache still. I never get used to it, especially at this hour in the morning.
What's the thinking here, Ger? How long is it going to last for? Is this the new you?
I mean, yeah, there's no thinking. It's just, it exists. Deal with it.
Did you also get a plumber skill set with it?
Hey, and that's, I need to get one of those costumes and get that shot before it goes.
Yeah, well, there's been plenty of reaction to that, Ger, and on Twitter. We might actually round that up over the next little while and get that back to you at the end of the slot. But Cian, this weekend in the NFL, we'll get into the matches in just a moment, but we saw in the NBA last night a walk-off from the Heat and the Celtics. We thought that there could actually be some sort of disruption to the game. That wasn't the case. They instead took a knee during the anthem, and then there was a knee taken in the Milwaukee game as well after tip-off. Do we expect similar levels of protest in the NFL this weekend?
I love that we're going into this topic and then we're going to round up reactions to Ger's mustache afterward. That's brilliant. I like the NFL and the NBA are two very different leagues, and if you've followed American sports over the last 10 years, over the last 5 years, even since 2017, the NFL has been a great medium to learn about wider America through because of Colin Kaepernick and the reaction to Colin Kaepernick. And the NBA is considered a progressive league, but it's not really a progressive league. It's the same, run by owners who are largely Republicans and largely Trump-leaning, conservative-leaning. But in the NBA, the players have so much power because, one, it's very simple reasons. One, there's far fewer players in the NBA on teams. Like LeBron James completely changes your team in the NFL or in the NBA in a way that NFL players simply can't because there's only 5 of them on the court at a time. And also, and it sounds kind of stupid and it sounds kind of rudimental, but the fact that they don't wear helmets gives the players there far more recognition and far more power. In that recognition, there's real power and there's real ability to affect change. Everyone knows who NBA players are because they know what they look like. Whereas the majority of NFL players, people barely recognize because they don't see them. They don't see them up close. They don't see them like there's no such thing as courtside in the NFL. Everyone's far away, even if you're at the games. So there's a power balance in the NBA where the players can kind of get more recognition and make more of an impact. Whereas in the NFL, if you protest too much, like Colin Kaepernick did, like Kenny Stills to an extent did, like Eric Reid did, you will lose your work and you will be pushed aside because of it. So will we see protests this weekend? We'll probably see players kneeling. We'll probably see the same stuff we've seen all along. And at this point, kneeling has kind of lost its power. It used to be, I think, it caused real problems and I think it really broke up and really made people talk about stuff they didn't want to talk about. And now it's kind of got to the point where we see people kneeling and we just go, okay. Even we see it in the Premier League now. So, but if you look at like America as a whole and you look at it through the prism of last night, what happened, like it kind of captures it perfectly. And I couldn't really sum it up better than how the NBA players in that statement did. If you're white in America, you can march into a Congress building and not expect to be attacked. If you're non-white in America, you can do absolutely nothing and be and fear for your life. And it's a sad thing to say, and when you say it that flatly and that straightforward, people get a little bit uncomfortable about it because it's an uncomfortable truth, but that's just the way it is.
You know, Patrick Mahomes might be the one player in the NFL who has a LeBron-like impact on his team, and they're not playing this weekend, so it'll be interesting to see if what happens when he plays, and look, that's another full week away, so we'll probably get an opportunity to see if he does make a statement, if he does try and politicize whatever's going on around the Chiefs game when they play the following week. So look, we should talk about the games this weekend because it's a non-Premier League weekend. There are some decent FA Cup ties, there are some turkeys as usual, but there are some brilliant NFL games, and we kind of wanted to set the table for people to get give them an idea of what they should be looking out for. So the Colts against the Bills is the opening game on Saturday. And if people are going to watch one game this weekend, then they should watch this, right?
Yes, well, actually, the beauty of this weekend is that the first games are both on 6 o'clock, and that's not normal because we got the extra game this year. And the first games on Saturday and Sunday are also look like they're going to be the best games. And the Bills and the Colts, it's a beautiful matchup because if you look at the Bills, Josh Allen has got a complete turnaround from where he was in his first two seasons. In his first two seasons, he was historically inaccurate. He was a completely incompetent quarterback who would just run the ball all the time because he didn't know how to throw the ball. Like if you banned the hand pass in the last couple of years, it wouldn't have mattered to Josh Allen because he couldn't throw the ball anyway. And this year, his accuracy has jumped. Like he's 10% more accurate in the 1 to 10 yard range. He's 10% more accurate on deep balls, which has a huge impact on his completion percentage, but also has had a huge impact on the rest of the offense, especially when you add Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is an uncoverable wide receiver on the outside. The Colts have no one who can match up to him. So you would expect the Bills to be able to move the ball a little bit. But what the Colts do have that nobody else has had with the Bills this year is a defensive line that will be able to get pressure on Allen. Because the strength of the Bills' offense, or the strength of the Bills' whole offense, while Allen has been very good at times, has been the offensive line. Because if you only rush 4 after Allen, they're not going to get anywhere near him. If you blitz him, then the offense has an advantage because they know you're blitzing and they can get the ball quickly to Diggs. And that's kind of the structure of the offense. And so now we look at the Colts defense and the matchup to that. You've got DeForest Buckner, who was a key player for the 49ers last year, who was the guy who was hitting Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl over and over and over again, which slowed down the Chiefs offense. You would expect him to get that pressure. And he's had a great year after being traded from the 49ers to the Colts. So you've got this something's got to win out situation where the pressure from the Colts defense against the quality of the Bills offense, something's going to win. And then the other side of the ball, you've got Jonathan Taylor, a rookie running back who's been incredible this year. So this could be a game where you have really tight matchup and a game where defense has a real impact, which hasn't really been the case this year. We've set record for scoring numbers this year, record for touchdowns, passing and running. So no one's really tackling anyone this year. But the Colts defense has been one of the true exceptions, while the Bills offense has been outstanding too. So it's going to be a really fascinating game. And it should be a really, I don't think it'll be as high scoring as some of the other games, but it'll be high scoring enough to keep the entertainment value up.
Yeah, and if it's low scoring, then that's a good chance for the Colts to win. And that's the Philippe Rivers story continuing. Every game is going to be his last game if he loses. Fairly open about that. Let's talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson, who last year was the MVP. Started the season a little bit slowly, but is one of the most electrifying people in world sport to watch. And again, absolutely worth watching this weekend because his form has come back. his form on the ground as a runner has been amazing over the last 5 or 6 weeks. And how he goes has kind of been the story of the Ravens this season too.
Yeah, well, the Ravens had to play in week 17 to get in, and like you kind of didn't expect that coming into the year. You expected them to walk into the league. Them and the Chiefs were the two top teams. Lamar was incredible last year, and he started this year all right, except for that week 2 game against the Chiefs where they basically the whole team no-showed. The Ravens' problem is they've lost so many players to injuries, and they've had on the offensive line in particular, they've lost Marshall Yanda and Ronnie Stanley from last year's team, which are their two best offensive linemen. They needed this year to become more of a passing offense. And everyone focuses on Lamar when you talk about this. But their real problem has been their receivers. They don't have receivers who can consistently get open and consistently catch the ball. And Marquise Brown has been the real problem. He doesn't really get open consistently, and he's had loads of drops. Now, he had 2 touchdowns last week, and he's had a couple of big plays, including a game winner against the Browns late in the fourth quarter when Lamar made an incredible throw back across his body. So you have a little bit of life in their passing game lately, but you also see that it's a team that's wholly reliant on running the ball. So why this becomes kind of fascinating is the Tennessee Titans have not stopped anyone in the passing game this year. Literally every quarterback they've come up against has had a good day against them because they have no pass rush at all. Jadeveon Clowney was brought in. He's not really a great pass rusher anyway, but he's out injured now. So they don't even have a guy who they were looking to. Harold Landry plays too many snaps because they don't have anyone who can come in and play behind him, which tires him out, which means he can't get to the quarterback consistently. If the Ravens come in and just try and run the ball, it'll probably keep this game closer than it should be because Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill on the other side will put up points against that Ravens defense. Now, this is a game where last year it was a little bit inverted, where the Ravens were the heavy favorites against the Titans, and the Titans came in and ran the ball well and were able to pick them apart with big plays downfield. Philippe Raymond scored a long touchdown over Earl Thomas, who's subsequently been released from the Ravens and actually didn't have a team this year. So you've got a completely different matchup there now, where you've got the Ravens going on the road. Lamar hasn't won a playoff game yet, which is a big narrative in America. It hasn't been his fault. He was over 500 yards last year, and in year 1, it was all about offensive line issues and receiver issues. So this should be a really high-scoring game, I think. If this goes to 40 with both teams, and basically the last team that has the ball wins. If you watched the Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl from a couple of years ago, where it was literally one defensive play won the game, it'll be kind of similar to that. Maybe not as high scoring just because of the way the Ravens offense works and keeps the ball for so long. And that's kind of a funny thing because Derrick Henry is known for that, whereas he might be more of the home run hitter compared to the Ravens, who have J.K. Dobbins, a rookie this year, who have Gus Edwards, who's having a great year, and Mark Ingram has kind of been pushed to the back now. So they're a little bit more explosive than last year, but they still want to grind out 5 and 6 yards per play and move downfield methodically.
1:15 on Sunday morning, we've got Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Washington football team. Can Brady, Cian, escape the clutches of Chase Young in this game?
So this is the game I have the least confidence in picking or in kind of understanding how the game is going to develop. I'm never really confident in picking games, but when you get to the playoffs, you have an idea of what the team is. So you can say this pass rush is going to win out, this offensive line is going to win out, this receiver is going to win out, this defender is going to win out. The problem with that with the Buccaneers is they've been so inconsistent, so wildly fluctuating from week to week. One of the big issues is Bruce Arians and Tom Brady are using so many different players on offense. Like you'll have Leonard Fournette, you'll have Ronald Jones sharing at running back. You have Cameron Braid. Jake Howard was in, but he got injured. Rob Gronkowski, and they've Tanner Hudson there as well at tight end. You've got wide receivers Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Scott Miller, and Chris Godwin. And the problem becomes all these players are rotating in and out, so they never really develop a rhythm. Antonio Brown has come alive over the last couple of weeks, and he's much better than Scott Miller, and he's probably a better fit with Brady than either of Evans and Godwin. So he's a really key feature in this game. And the reason he's so important to Brady is Brady likes to catch and release the ball. He doesn't want to hold the ball. He wants to get the ball out quickly. And when you've got an offensive line like the Buccaneers have, a really poor one, a really limited one, that's a key detail. But Evans is 6'5" and 300 pounds or whatever he is. He's not going to get open quickly. Antonio Brown can. So if Brady can connect with Brown over and over again, and Scott Miller will probably have a bigger role as well, they'll be able to move the ball against this Washington offense, or against this Washington defense. The counterpoint there is if he has to hold the ball, it's not just Chase Young who'll be coming from. Daron Payne is an incredible player. Jonathan Allen can get there from the interior. Ryan Kerrigan is old now, but he comes in as a rotational pass rusher. Montez Sweat is a second-year player who's up at around 10 sacks this year. Brady's going to get beaten up here. Whether he can hold up and actually move the ball enough to win the game, I think he probably can, because on the other side of the ball, you've got Alex Smith, who's extremely limited, despite a great story of him coming back from nearly losing his leg, not being able to walk anymore, to being a playoff starting quarterback. The problem there is he's still checking the ball down too much. Logan Thomas is really good at tight end. Terry McLaurin is arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. Antonio Gibson is a great running back, but I just don't think they have enough firepower on offense to match Brady playing well. So it really does come down to Chase Young versus Tom Brady.
It's too early for them, all right. It feels a little bit. The Bears, they are up against the Saints, and this is, again, potentially Drew Brees' last ever match. Is there an upset here? Is Mitchell Trubisky going to annoy the Saints and give them another heartbreaking defeat for the 4th successive year?
I think this is it. I think this is where the upset is, because the Saints have had a very similar script every single year, where they get to the playoffs and Drew Brees is just wrecked tired, and he's now over 40. He's got a couple of broken ribs, or at least he had a couple of broken ribs last month, so he's not going to be fully recovered from that. He hasn't played particularly well when he has been healthy, so expecting a big game from him is one thing. Now you've got a Bears team coming in that just got blown out by the Packers, but they got blown out by the Packers because Aaron Rodgers is a god this year, even though he didn't have a great game last week, and he's the easy MVP this year. But if you have the Bears defense with Khalil Mack coming in, with the interior pressure of Akeem Hicks coming in, it's going to be a big ask for Brees to move the ball. So it really comes down to, is Mitch Trubisky going to turn the ball over? And Mitch Trubisky, like, for his rock roll of his career he's had, for much of a roller coaster it's been, the ups have been great, the downs have been really, really bad. He's never really found a middle ground. He's found a way to be consistent and play to play. I think the last month of his career has probably been that time where he's been closest to a medium quarterback, closer to consistent play to play, expecting getting what you expect. So if Trubisky avoids the major mistakes, and that's a big if based on his career, then the Bears could very easily come in and win this game. David Montgomery is going to be able to run the ball. They're not really going to focus on Allen Robinson because of Marshawn Lattimore. They're taking him away. I think they have the ability to cause an upset. Will I pick them outright? I think I probably will.
Right, okay. It's 11 broken ribs Drew Brees had, not to underplay it. He only had 22 ribs, I think. So half of his ribs were broken. Cian, good stuff. Nice one. Thanks a million. Enjoy the weekend. Cheers.
I'm just happy I was more energetic than Raj at this time of the morning.
Cian Fahey with us there, previewing the weekend's NFL action and telling you what to watch. Now, one of the most important stories in the world, apart from America being on fire, is the rollout of the vaccine. And obviously, we need a hierarchy of who gets the vaccine first. I mean, probably it should be healthcare workers and frontline workers, but we're not sure. Maybe there's a case to be made for certain sports fans to skip the queue and get there first. So, is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we've heard all the cliches. Sport is nothing without fans. The game's not the same without the supporters roaring on from the stands. But unfortunately, not all fans are created equal. So to remove any doubt about where priorities should lie, here is a list of sports fans that deserve the COVID vaccine before all others. So we've got 7 here in no particular order. The first group of fans who deserve the vaccine is the British and Irish Lions fans. Because supporting the British and Irish Lions is a labour of love. It is about laughing at Scotland for getting only 1 player into the squad while Ireland managed 2. It's about forgetting about 800 years of history as Owen Farrell and Johnny Sexton warm up together. How can you possibly take this away from those beautiful supporters this year? Besides, there are also rumours, as we've covered on OTB AM this week, that Dublin could host a game. And without a vaccine, another year will pass without the English boys from Dorking or FC paying €12 for a pint in the Temple Bar. These are the pillars of society that we need to protect. The Lions fans don't deserve Gatlin's pick and go. The Lions fans deserve to jab and go. And that is as good as you'll get from me this morning. But we will move on to the second group of fans who deserve to be vaccinated before all others. It is the Buffalo Bills fans. They deserve to get the jab as well, because you should know them by now. We've covered them on the show in the past as well. If you're not familiar with the Bills Mafia, well, here is a Buffalo Bills fan trying to impress his cousin by being thrown through a table. And just in case you didn't get the picture, here's another one. So the great thing about vaccinating Buffalo Bills fans is that you will get great efficiency from the amount of vaccines that you need in this particular case, because these sets of human beings have consumed so much Four Loko in their lives that they're actually immune to coronavirus. They have essentially been vaccinated. As you can see from their behavior right now, they've got a particular strain of whatever it is that they've got in their bodies, and they are safe from coronavirus. We'll only need a few vaccines here or there. And also, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan as of about 48 hours ago again, so I guess I get a jab myself. But you look at that, I just happen to find myself immune to coronavirus myself. The third group of sports fans who deserve to get vaccinated are Arsenal fans, because the very fibre of Arsenal Football Club is under threat without the vaccine. Chaos has ensued on Arsenal fan TV. They've got no vox pops outside the grounds. They've had to watch all the games from a dingy studio. And worst of all, Troops, who we can see on screen, has emigrated to the United States. He's gone. He's extinct. We need the vaccine to bring these people back together. And also as well, I happen to be an Arsenal fan, so I guess that's my second jab. And when you look at that, I'm fully immune to coronavirus. What a coincidence. The fourth group of sports fans who are going to get vaccinated before all others, or who should get vaccinated before all others, are Mayo fans. And this is more of a precautionary measure than anything else. What if they do indeed win the 2021 All-Ireland? We need to be ready for such an outcome. We also need to be ready for them to be perhaps in extra time of a really close championship match, and out of nowhere a wild Mayo Mick appears. Like, even without fans in stadiums, there is always a danger that Mayo Mick appears. So it is essential that Mayo fans get vaccinated en masse. Now, they are the only group of GEA fans who I've put on this list. So what will happen probably is that next year Dublin will beat Mayo in an All-Ireland final in front of a full house, and all you'll be able to hear are the screams of 82,000 Mayo people. Some people will look at that in the positive. If you think that, you're absolutely sick. That's what's going to happen. Number 5, the next group of people to get vaccinated are Atlanta United fans. So have you thought for 1 second about Major League Soccer during this pandemic? Of course you haven't. It's absolutely terrible. But after months of complete and utter misery, what we need in our lives is something to cheer us up. And getting to hear the Atlanta United fans churn out this banger could just cheer us up.
This is Atlanta! This is Atlanta! You better watch your mouth! You better watch your mouth! This is Atlanta! This is Atlanta! We're gonna stomp you out! We're gonna stomp you out!
A truly fearsome supporting group right there. I think the guy playing the drums was actually seen in a Viking hat storming the Capitol last night, so maybe he doesn't get a vaccine, but everybody else from Atlanta United and all their ultras do get vaccinated. Next up, number 6, is the Ryder Cup fans. I'm allocating vaccines to Europe's Ryder Cup fans, just Europe's Ryder Cup fans. Screw the American golf fans, they're all anti-vaxxers anyway. So why are we picking the European golf fans? Well, look at their gear, as we can see on screen right now. When else do you get the chance to wear a European Union outfit to a sporting event? The answer is literally never. There are a number of golf fans waking up this morning with an unused European Union outfit hanging up in their wardrobe. What a terrible state of affairs. Are we really going to tell them that they can't attend the competition? No, we're not. They deserve the job as well. So Ryder Cup fans, you're in. Which leaves us with only one more spot. 7th, last but definitely not least, getting in here are WWE fans, because this has been the one event that's actually just been disturbing with its absence of fans. It's given me nightmares. So I was watching Stone Cold Steve Austin a little bit earlier on do his thing, and his routine doesn't actually change without fans whatsoever. He continues to smash beer cans together and down them like somebody who is about to take a very dangerous spiral in their life. We basically need to vaccinate WWE fans to save Stone Cold Steve Austin from a very grisly end to 2021. WWE fans, you're in the mix, you're vaccinated. And there you go, that is your list. If you're not in that list, well, sorry, you got to wait till, 2023.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Do you charge extra for tickets? So, like it's $1,000 a pop for a ticket for the Lions and a vaccine? Is that how that works? Is there a little side hustle here where we can make some cash from this?
Yes, absolutely. All of those travel agencies who are looking after packages, get your hands on some vaccines, sweeten the deal a little bit. Emma's just asking here, do English Ryder Cup fans still get the vaccine? The answer is yes, Emma. There's no such thing as Brexit in golf. As we all know, there are people waking up, as I say, in England this morning with their European Union waistcoat hanging up, and they deserve to be jabbed.
I mean, it's a really interesting question. I do wonder about how can Brexit voting English golf fans realistically support the European Ryder Cup team?
Because borders are a nonsense, and maybe the idea of borders being there in the first place and the Ryder Cup being a nonsense is true as well, but it's something that has stood the test of time, and I guess they supported their team. Like nobody is getting behind Brussels.
That's not a good answer. You can start that one again if you want.
nobody's like getting behind Brussels for the European Ryder Cup team. It's all a little bit of a nonsense anyway. So I don't know. This is the team they've always played on, and why stop supporting them now?
Okay, we found the hole in the whole Ryder Cup thing. Is that in the whole Brexit/Ryder Cup in their relationship? That's going on? Fair enough.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think we're going to be joined by Joe Molloy in a little while to chat a little bit about the golfing year ahead. He's going to give us some golfers to watch for the year ahead. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be joined by Joe after that.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB.
For Sterling! Raheem Sterling!
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. For the first time ever, bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest game of the week right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
9:15, you're very welcome back. We're joined by Joe Molloy. How are you getting on, Joe?
Great, lads. How you doing?
Good.
Very well. So you were live on the air last night when all hell was breaking loose in the United States. Did you manage to keep even a single eye on United against City, or was it, oh God, this is too insane to not be looking at right now? It was CNN all the way.
Yeah, kept both eyes on the game. And then I had my phone in front of me and was just watching the pictures as they came in. And we went over for about 10 minutes just after 9 o'clock to an American guest. We got onto the hard shoulder and said, who should we get on? And they gave us a few names. And we had a reporter on for about 10 minutes just filling the listeners in because it was so nuts. It just felt odd to be talking about Wan-Bissaka going down the right wing the whole time. So surreal, wasn't it? I mean, it was just depressing and just grim in every possible way.
Yeah, and weirdly, I think because it's all going to be okay. It was also really like parts of it were high farce. Like the calm nature of the people inside the building was so farcical that it was impossible not to be laughing at it. Like, look at this chaos which is ensuing, and at the same time, like it's obviously very important, but it was definitely there was a confused. My WhatsApp groups were like full of cry laughing emojis at what was going on, and pictures, and like the guy in the hat, the various guys in the hat, the guy with the sign. Like, I mean, it was innately hilarious, and yet at the same time, obviously, tragic. It was. How do you process that? I don't know.
Yeah, I exactly the same thought process at home when I got home and I started watching it. And on the one hand, symbolically, it's awful, and it represents so much that is wrong in the States, and it represents a billion problems, not least the influence of social media, which again, just, I was just thinking like 12 years ago, everyone was on Bebo and I hadn't heard of Facebook. And now look where we are. Like, we just can't as human beings or as human institutions keep up with what's going on in the world. And the QAnon conspiracy theory, Tony O'Sullivan on CNN last night kept talking about all these guys who were there talking about the QAnon conspiracy theory, and I'm like, I haven't even heard of this. And then you look at what it is, and it's Trump taking on a ring of pedophiles in the media and at government level and in banking, and you think, how are thousands of people so warped that they're into this? And so that's all very worrying. And at the same time, it wasn't a coup. There was no danger to American democracy. It was a couple of idiots who managed to break in and got in and didn't quite know what to do, so they started taking pictures. I mean, so I agree with you. It was both at the same time.
Once that became clear, because the report came through that there was an improvised explosive device found at Capitol Hill, and like these are people who you would expect to be very highly armed because the protection of their right to bear arms is something that they hold dear. Like, if they had all been heavily armed, then it could have gone the other way. But once it became clear that wasn't happening, like, quite funny in parts.
Yeah, very, very surreal. I mean, don't think it's going to happen at the inauguration. Would think security will be a bit better in 2 weeks' time.
I'd like to hope
a
so.
ring of steel.
That would that would certainly be the hope and expectation for 2021, that they actually have some sort of policing presence at the inauguration this year. So, like, Joe, you brought Trump up. That's our segue into golf, right? This is how we get into this conversation. We're talking about the PGA Tour ahead. By the way, we just got a tweet up on screen from Golf Weekly, and still pro golfers will line up to play golf with Trump. In terms of the golf this year, like, we'll actually talk about some of the on-course matters, and you've picked out 4 golfers we're actually going to watch this year in 2021. These are all pretty household names. Are you thinking these are going to be big names, or you think that we're going to have like massive major wins here, or are some of these names people that you're expecting to actually dwindle this year?
Yeah, I didn't go into any great criteria, so I've probably therefore picked out the more obvious ones in no particular order, and I'll give you a headline reason as to why for each one, and then you can pick whatever interests you. Dustin Johnson, you kind of have to pick him because he won the Masters and made the Masters almost boring. He was shot 20 under at Augusta. He was a 5-shot winner. He won the FedEx Cup. He's the world number 1. Dustin Johnson has runaway train potential, which is rare in the post-Tiger Woods era. So that's why Dustin has to be in there. Rory McIlroy, because we're all interested in Rory, and he is the enigma that keeps on confusing. So that's Rory. And 2020 was as confusing a year as he has ever had. Bryson DeChambeau is in there, won the US Open, has transformed his body and become very, very long indeed off the tee, and is talking about getting longer and wants to break the 200 mile per hour mark in competition. Nobody's broken the 192 mark in competition. So what's he going to do next? That's fascinating. And then thirdly, for a slightly different reason, Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm's not, overly interesting or gripping, I think, to the casual golf fan. He's just one of those guys who's really, really good. And he is really good. He's world number 2. He's won 5 times in the PGA Tour. He can win easy courses, hard courses, as we know in Ireland, links courses, park-time courses, destined to win a major very, very soon. And he's done this thing that makes, I suspect, especially the pros wince when they hear it. He has made a big equipment change. He's gone from TaylorMade, who, make all the best drivers, all the best woods in particular. Like, there's a reason Tiger and Rory post-Nike went to TaylorMade. They could have gone anywhere. They went to TaylorMade. So Jon Rahm has left TaylorMade, peak of his powers, world number 2. You would feel on the precipice of winning a major, and he's joined Callaway. He played Callaway in college, but it's a risk. And the game is littered with players who have made moves and then been out of funk for a year or 2 or 3, or even, in Justin Rose's case most recently, he went from TaylorMade to Honma, a Japanese company. I mean, they make unbelievably expensive equipment. If you were to buy a Honma set of irons, it's how many thousands are you talking about? So he joined them in 2019 and even won in his second week with them. And you thought, okay, this will be all right. But it's amazing just the level of precision all of these guys play with. Even the ball makes a colossal difference. And Rose and his form disappeared. He went into the wilderness, and sometime mid last year, he just had to end the deal, So I'm not sure what settlement was reached, but he's gone back to his old equipment. So I'm really curious to see what Jon Rahm does. So they were the 4 big names I sort of threw at you to kick things off.
I did, just on that point, I'm really fascinated by this, because the amount of money the equipment makers give them must be so big to make them even. We know how superstitious sports people are, like the smallest of what seems like inconsequential stuff, and then for them literally to change the tools which made them rich and famous and brilliant, the enticement and the inducements must be absolutely massive. I presume. Are they? Are we talking like? Are we talking? I will pay you millions to move from TaylorMade to Callaway. Is it that big?
Seems to be. I mean, what Nike threw. Now, this was an exceptional deal. Nike threw the guts of $200 million at Rory McIlroy for a 10-year deal. And that was serious money to turn down. In Justin Rose's case, it did feel like more of a business decision than sporting. Jon Rahm and his people are talking up the fact that he did play Callaway in college, and so he does have a residual love affair with Callaway. But you would have to think finances are the main reason. I mean, he may come out and give some reason as to why they're not, but it looks that way. I mean, everything has been going so well for Jon Rahm. Everything's pointing in the right direction to change your equipment and the ball. I mean, crucially, the ball as well. Like Paul McGinley was on with us just pre-Christmas when the Rahm news was brewing. It was kind of an open secret. And he was saying, Harrington played with Wilson, who wouldn't be regarded as at the forefront of golfing equipment, but he was meticulous about the ball he played with. Didn't play with a Wilson ball, you know, he played with the best ball available. So Ram's gone with the Callaway ball as well. And, you know, all of this stuff between the irons and the ball, it's a massive risk. And I can only see the reason as being financial. Now, he said he shot a 59 course record when he used the Callaway equipment very recently, and he's feeling really good about it. But, you know, they all feel really good about it when they make the move.
Of course they're going to say that. Yeah, it's just, the money must be as much as they would make in prize money for the year. It must be the guarantee that, okay, we'll guarantee you 5 or 6 million a year for the next 5 or 6 years. But you're like, yeah, okay, I can take that risk, and that de-risks it.
Yeah, but I mean, it de-risks it financially for sure. But I mean, no one is going to say in 20 years' time, John Ram, 0 majors, but, you know, he kept up a steady stream of income across the 2020s. Like Brooks Koepka is an interesting case. He has turned down all equipment offers so that he can cherry pick the best driver, the best irons, the best ball, different equipment here or there. He figures in the long run, if I win tournaments, I'll be just fine financially.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do as well. And I presume if Brooks decides that this driver is amazing and this wedge is amazing, the wedge company are going to be like, yes, like you've literally taken every single wedge in the world and decided mine's the best. Here's a load of money. Don't change.
Yeah, that's very possible too. I mean, put it this way, Brooks still isn't buying his equipment off the rack, you know. So yeah, that's why it's going to be really interesting to see if John Ram goes the way of Justin Rose, or if it's pretty seamless, you know. And look, Tiger Woods may do with Nike equipment, which the consensus would be was not of the standard of other manufacturers, and he did just fine. By all accounts, you know, McIlroy noticed a bit of an improvement in his driving when he went from Nike to TaylorMade. So this stuff makes a difference. There's no doubt this stuff makes a difference, and we're talking about fine margins.
You picked 4, but Brooks isn't on your list. Why is that? Because there was a time when I remember talking to Nathan about this, like, oh, Brooks Koepka is automatically going to be the favourite for every major he plays in the next 18 months, 2 years. And I think it's only about 12 months ago saying that.
I mean, he is on my list, really, I suppose, as well. I just could only pick 4. The short story of Brooks is, I mean, if we were talking 12 months ago, you would have been looking at him thinking, my God, this guy could do anything. He'll contend in every single major. He could win any number of majors. He's just had an injury-ravaged year, and we don't know where he is. And it's a worrying injury. You know, it's getting to the stage now where it's like, yeah, he'll play again. Of course he'll play again, but what are we going to see from him? He blew out his knee. He blew out his knee, and I'm not sure was ever really playing pain-free throughout 2020. And there was then pain in his hip as a result of the knee. So when it starts spreading around like that and the body is compensating for whatever is going on in the knee, it gets very worrying. Like at the US Open, he was getting treatment on his hip, legacy of the knee injury. So he was never right. He was never right this year. Now, he's still sort of, in a Brooks way, got himself vaguely in the mix at a couple of majors. But there's a question mark now there, you know, is he going to be able to swing freely the way he was swinging? And that's very much up in the air. So that's kind of why he's not coming in with all the fanfare that was there last year for sure.
What about Rory?
Can I ask you about Bryson? Yeah, well, sorry. We finished up on Rory. I've got a quick one on Bryson. You finished up when you gave his candidacy there by saying it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next. Do we know how he is going to get to the next level? Has he been open about that at all? I mean, last year it seemed like a very physical transformation. I'm sure there was technique involved as well. Is it just more bulk this year? Is that what we expect?
Well, you see, so like Bryson he's just a fascinating case study in so many things, even in perception versus reality. So he won the US Open last year at winged foot when everybody thought that his approach was not going to work, that you can't just bomb it and gouge at a US Open, especially at winged foot, you know. And he proved everybody wrong, and he won in record fashion. The thing, though, yes, he hits the ball a long way, but he was 6th longest at that US Open. So really what DeChambeau did last year, as much as anything, and it obviously wasn't as sexy to talk about, but he turned himself into an unbelievable putter, having been a not so great putter. And that's an unbelievably difficult thing to do. And his short game was phenomenal when he won that US Open. So 6th longest. I mean, at the US Open, if you ask anyone who was longest at the US Open, who casually watch it, they would say Bryson, because every time he hit a ball, the commentator said, "Oh my God, look how far it's going," and he'd flex his biceps, and perception became reality. So what he has done is turned himself from a reasonably long hitter into one of the longest, if not, in fairness, the longest on tour, but not by like a gazillion miles. He played with John Ram at Augusta and was only 5 to 10 yards ahead of John Ram tops on every drive. That's negligible if you're in Ram's situation. So he turned himself into a more complete player in 2020 than people might give him credit for. And then at Augusta, he was poised, it felt like, to dominate again, and had this mysterious illness and was tested for COVID on the Friday and was dizzy and was like blading balls across the green. And it was odd, actually. So, who knows? I still don't think they're at the root of what happened there. So for Bryson Owen, I would think, as he said himself, he's going to try and get to 210 mile per hour average ball speed, which is nuts. He's currently at 192. So more bulk, more speed. He's going to eventually put a longer driver into the bag, which is harder to control, but the ball obviously goes a lot further the longer your shaft in the driver. And he's going to continue to push limits, I suppose, is what we're expecting from Bryson. But I can't be more precise than that. That's why he's really interesting to watch.
I think what might have happened to Bryson, remember, teenagers who have growth spurts, they kind of say stand up and they fall over because they're too gangly and their body hasn't grown into itself yet. Bryson's a bit like that at that major. It's like, my body has ballooned so much, I don't really know. I'm wobbling around the place.
Well, maybe 18 protein shakes a day isn't the way to go. Who knows, as well. So, that was odd. So we'll see where he is this year.
His digestive system must be a marvel.
Can I ask Joe, has like, the way I'm sure most golfers would be very eager to get out on the course the morning after the last set of Masters or whatever, and people watch the pros and try and emulate them. Has the golf world tried to emulate Bryson DeChambeau? Are you on the protein shakes, for example? Are you saying, God, I got to get bigger for 2021?
No. Okay. It's there's nothing about that approach you can emulate as an amateur. I would just, I'd hit the ball arguably slightly further, but just more wayward. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this was the thing about DeChambeau. This was what the old school types in golf thought wouldn't work. That, okay, he's going to hit the ball a gazillion miles, but it'll be more offline, and therefore he'll get into all sorts of bother. And he proved that claim slightly wrong. Although it did bite him in the ass at Augusta when it's not as easy to gouge out and run the ball up to a green. But no, like there's, in short, there is nobody in the amateur ranks suddenly downing the protein shakes and trying to get bigger in the hope of improving their ball speed. Amateurs don't even know what their ball speed is. So. No, I don't think so. This is just a freakish elite level of way of going about things.
Okay, what about Rory? Is he entering the point of his career where he's a really compelling individual and a businessman, but not as competitive as he was at his peak? Or is there a possibility that he could make a comeback and be relevant at the top end in majors regularly?
Huge possibility of the latter. I really hope we're not at the former. I hope that's at least 10 years away. Where we are, Rory, is genuinely an enigma. You just can't work out what's going on here. Pre-lockdown, he was brilliant, Ger. He was so good, and he was just about to win, and you felt if the Masters had happened when the Masters was meant to happen, that he was going in there as favourite. And I don't know what happened during lockdown. Obviously, he became a father this year, and maybe practice dwindled. Physically, he seemed to be fine, but he emerged post-lockdown, and it was just, by his standards, it was no good. It was really no good. Like his iron play, for instance, crucial at Augusta, and Augusta looms large when you talk about Rory, because that will transform his legacy if he does manage to win there and to win the Grand Slam. But you take his iron play, he was third in the world strokes gained pre-lockdown with an iron in his hand, and then went out to 60th post-lockdown. Can't really explain that. That's just odd. And the other aspect of the enigma is that at Augusta, rounds 2 to 4, he shot a 66, 67, 69. He's this is beautiful. But on the Thursday, he shoots a 75. And he's chunking the ball into the water on 16. He is, hooking his drive on 13 into the trees. And this was a tournament where his driving was exhibition standard for the rest of the tournament. So this was not a technical issue. So then that leads you to saying something which just can't be true, which is that, does Rory have an issue with pressure? And you say it can't be true because he's won 4 majors and he's played brilliant golf under massive pressure. But at the same time, a part of your brain is looking at him and saying, well, too often when the pressure is on, i.e. first round at Augusta, he's not producing his best stuff. You know, like there's no other real explanation for some of those shots we saw in the first round. And then suddenly, when he's out of the tournament.
Well, it was just Augusta as well. First round of the Open, like on his home turf.
Yes, exactly. I think it's a great, the thing is, there are other examples. If you were to back up this theory, I don't quite believe that there's an issue there when he's under massive pressure. Portrush jumps to mind, and there are a couple of other examples jump to mind. And too often he reverses into a top 5 or top 10. Like he still finished 5th at the Masters, but he was never in the tournament. And I remember previewing that with you guys and saying, I just really hope whatever happens, he's in the tournament. Like, I don't care if he loses it on the back nine on Sunday, but just don't lose it on the Thursday. And so it transpired. But so how do you explain that? I mean, you can't say, oh, Rory has some issue with pressure at the moment. And yet psychologically, there's just something off. And when he plays his best stuff, like Paul McGinley uses the phrase pointy elbows. Sometimes he plays his best when he's a little bit angry and a little bit point to prove-ish. Like Paul Kimmage did that big sit-down interview with McIlroy, was it a year ago? Probably a year ago. And, there's a telling point in that interview where Rory had about 2 years, 2019, when Brooks Koepka was really on it. Rory and Brooks were paired together in 2 big tournaments last round, kind of 2-3 weeks apart, And what transpired had happened was, in the first of those, Brooks had trounced McIlroy. He was alpha male, he was eyes ahead, and it was a dominant performance. And then flash forward 2-3 weeks later, McIlroy destroys Koepka. It turned out that Koepka had texted a bunch of friends saying that he was going to destroy McIlroy. And McIlroy's people had got hold of that. And it's telling, they let McIlroy know. They showed it to him. They told him about it. And it got him into kind of a space where there's just a point to prove, a little bit of anger. And I think almost that can supersede the nerves sometimes with him. If there is a pressure, if there is a kink there, sometimes actually a bit of anger, it's like, forget, I don't time for nerves. I actually want to remind everybody how good I am. Like JP, his caddy a couple of years ago, turned around to him 5-6 holes into the Open and saying, you're Rory effing McIlroy. What are you doing here? When he was making a mess of things, and he kind of clicks into gear. And for Rory, it's still just about clicking into gear, whatever that, and he has to sit with that and think about that and really, relive what's going through his head at times like Portrush and Augusta, and uncomfortable half hours, really relive it, thinking about it. What are my go-to shots when I'm feeling this way? But I would be very hopeful this year that actually, I think that was a chastening 6 months, and he's such a brilliant player. I just got this sneaking suspicion 2021. I really do give him a big chance in the Masters. I think he's going to come out aggressive. I think he's a little bit peeved.
Joe, we have 30 seconds here. We've got 2 quick mentions to wrap up.
Just want to mention very briefly Sofia Popov. So I'm really watching out for Sofia. She won the British Open last year at Royal Troon. Dreadful conditions. It was on again over Christmas. I watched it. She played the most sublime golf. She's really interesting because she was ready to quit the game, down tools. She had spent 3 or 4 years trying to figure out what was wrong with her. It turned out she had Lyme disease, and she only got into the Open because of COVID, and there were a few exemptions. 304th in the world, and she won the Open in stunningly good fashion, and now her health is back, and obviously she's got her card. So 27-year-old Sofia Popov, Germany, really kind of rooting for her to do something in 2021. So I'll be keeping an eye on her for sure as well.
Good stuff. Joe, thanks a million.
All right, fellas, pleasure.
Cheers.
Make sure to check out Joe on Twitter and Golf Weekly on Twitter, of course, as well. Podcasts every single Thursday. Just a quick breaking story before we go to Philippe Auclair. The Irish News reporting that Down GEA are being investigated by the GEA after police were called to an outdoor session on Tuesday night. So a report from the public of people playing on pitches at Abbey, CBS and Newry. PSNI officers responded to that, and having established that no breaches of regulations had taken place as it was an elite team, the officers left, a PSNI spokesperson left. However, the GEA likely to take a dim view to a breach of their own protocols at the moment. Down, meanwhile, denied that any training session took place, but that around 18 players, including some new call-ups, being present in 2 separate groups. So that's the latest there. The Irish News reporting that this morning. Right, it is 9:39 on this Thursday morning, and OTB AM is live every single morning from 7:30 to 10 in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I should mention tomorrow morning we're going to be joined by Eric Donovan, and we're going to be chatting to Alan Quinlan as well. Plenty of build-up to the FA Cup as well. Right now, though, we're bringing you Kevin Doyle on Manchester United and Philippe Auclair talking Poch to Paris Saint-Germain.
Now, we're very happy to say that Philippe Auclair is with us. Philippe, hello, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Interesting times at PSG. So Mauricio Pochettino and his staff appointed on Saturday up until 2022 with the option of a third year. He obviously played for the club previously back in 01-03. Before Pochettino and all that, can we have a glance back at the Thomas Tuchel era? As things stand, PSG are third in Ligue 1 after 17 games, which is kind of interesting. But they are only a point behind Lyon and Lille, who are joint top. They're through to the Champions League knockout stages, as Manchester United fans will know well. Last year, Champions League final, and their 7th Ligue 1 in 8 years. So does Tuchel depart with his reputation enhanced or diminished? Is he hot property now in European football?
I'll say neither. And the reason is that the results have been, what you would expect. He was the first PSG manager to take the club to a Champions League final, which is a great achievement, even if it was an achievement that was reached in pretty peculiar circumstances. We'll remember the game against Atalanta, for example, and the kind of lucky draw that PSG had in the final late, but they made the most of it. So in this context, he did very well. In other contexts, he was not exactly as successful as I think he himself and the hierarchy at PSG would have liked him to be. They haven't quite gone past this glass ceiling that they seem to bump their head against ever since, actually, Carlo Ancelotti was the manager of the club. And despite huge investment, they succeeded domestically, but to be honest, this is par for the course. This is just like for them to win the title and even to do a treble is nothing exceptional. It's almost like avoiding relegation for a mid-table club and in the Premier League. So his legacy, if there is such a word, is very difficult to evaluate at this moment because you don't feel that there is a legacy as such, that you don't feel that what he has done as PSG is going to have a lasting impact on what the club is going to do over the next couple of seasons. And actually, the very illustration of that is the fact they've taken on a manager who is a legacy manager, i.e. Mauricio Pochettino, a man who's never won anything, but a man who is capable not only to give them success in the short term, which is what they want, but also to build the foundations of the PSG that Nasser Al-Khelaifi and his bosses dream of.
Thomas Tuchel's position never felt that secure. I mean, even take something he said in October. He was very unhappy that PSG lost Cavani to Manchester United and Thiago went to Chelsea as well. And he was saying, we lose too many players on free transfers. Yep. And Leonardo, sporting director, came out and said, Tuchel needs to understand how delicate the current situation is. We've seen a drop of more than 100 million euros in our income. We've got financial fair play. The club and I really aren't pleased about his comments about the lack of signings. If someone isn't happy, they should leave. I'll speak to him in private about this. Now, I'm no fortune teller, Philippe, but at that stage, if I was Pochettino, my ears were peaking. The only way Tuchel could have survived was to make himself virtually unsackable at all times, and PSG's domestic form was very, very average. 14 points from a possible 24. What's this about?
It's about mostly an impossible season to manage to start with. It's the result of, obviously their season ended much, much later than anybody else in the French league. He's had to rely on a squad which was never complete, never full. You had all the COVID cases with very strange behavior from some top players like Neymar, for example. You might remember that. There were a number of injuries. He's never been able to put together the team that he really wanted. And to be honest, I don't think he had the team he wanted either. And when Leonardo is alluding to the differences of appreciation between himself and his then manager, a lot of it relates to the politics of recruitment. Tuchel really felt that the club was not recruiting properly. I have to say that the financial fair play angle is a complete red herring, because we all know that UEFA has actually more or less suspended de facto FPF because of the pandemic. So, and PSG has got a few millions in the bank to deal with. But it was really one of the many things on which the two men were at loggerheads, and it held on until the final of the Champions League. According to everything I've heard from actually inside the camp, the atmosphere within PSG, the dressing room, was really good up until that final against Bayern Munich. They had found a kind of togetherness that perhaps had been elusive beforehand in the run-up to the final, but then afterwards everything went wrong. And the results on the pitch were very disappointing. They were not exactly unexpected. And to be honest, many people thought this was just a period of adaptation for this PSG, who's played far longer than the others, hasn't had the full squad, and also these internal struggles that had to be resolved one way or another. So is Tuchel responsible for that? Certainly not entirely.
Because he said even just last month that he felt more like a sports politician or sports minister than a football coach. I mean, like, this thing was just brewing. His sacking was brewing clearly when he was saying these kind of things. I saw as well Thomas Meunier, who left in the summer. He says he remembers his 4 years at PSG as nothing but birthday parties, which is just one of the great quotes, I think. And I see is it CNN Brazil are saying Neymar has been having some kind of festive bash underground, which he's denying. So, you know, these are all the things that Pochettino now is suddenly going to face.
Yes, it's going to be interesting. There have been quite a few reports about this massive bash. Some people said 500 people were invited, not in Neymar's house, but in another place close to his home in Brazil. He's not come back in a fit state because, for example, he won't be in the squad which is going to play against Saint-Etienne this evening, in the resumption of the French league. There are a number of problems that Pochettino will have to face very, very quickly. There is indiscipline within this camp, and it has been the case for a very long time. A recurring problem that all managers since Antoine Kombouaré and Carlo Ancelotti, Laurent Blanc, Unai Emery had to face was the fact that they never quite felt that the PSG hierarchy, i.e. Nasser Al-Khelaifi, was fully on their side when they were having problems, especially disciplinary problems with some players. And it's well known as well that PSG is a little bit like the old FC Hollywood that Bayern Munich used to be at one point. Some players don't necessarily have the kind of hygiene in terms of a lifestyle, of course, that you would expect from top footballers. And it's been very difficult for managers so far to be able to impose their will and their discipline on that group of players. They have tried to address that by moving some players away. They have tried to address that by having managers who had a reputation for being quite strict disciplinarians, which is certainly true of Tuchel and is even true of Mauricio Pochettino. So you would say that, yes, the next few weeks are going to be very interesting in terms of team selection and in terms of what happens exactly in the relationship between the player and the new manager. And believe me, PSG being the leakiest club in Liga, we will know about this fairly soon.
Yeah, it just seems like such a mess to try and clean up. Yeah. And it's not that the dice are rigged necessarily, but it's complicated by the fact that you, seemingly any manager goes in there, you in Pochettino's case, you are not as powerful as Neymar. For instance, one of the main protagonists when it comes to a lack of hygiene. I like that phrase of yours, by the way. So Neymar's off doing his thing, and the president enjoys chatting to Neymar, and it's nice. There's egos, and it's nice, and me and Neymar are on our level, and we're good friends, and Neymar's doing his thing. Yep. And meanwhile, you're Pochettino coming into this mess where previously, the alpha males in your dressing room were Harry Kane and Son, both absolute models of professionalism and humility. So how does any manager clean up PSG when effectively that manager is not all that powerful?
I guess you've just given one of the reasons why Pochettino's contract is only 18 months long. Why would a club which has just netted one of the most sought-after managers in the world game, would only give him 18 months? No way. That's not going to happen. So my guess would be that Mauricio Pochettino would like to taste the water for a while before fully engaging with PSG, because he might have some ideas at the back of his mind. What can I say? I think you're absolutely right. I think the coziness of the relationships that Al Khelaifi and some other people at the club have had with some of the star players has been really a problem. It's also, I don't think it's not betraying a secret when saying that when things don't go right, it becomes quite difficult for the managers to have a direct link to their owner and to their chairman, i.e. Nasser Al Khelaifi, and beyond that, the Emir of Qatar. And there tends to be, the players rule, basically. And this is where, when the appointment of Mauricio Pochettino, you could see it in two ways. You could see it, first of all, it's a really quite fashionable and impressive appointment, but it might also be a statement of intent, because we all know how Mauricio Pochettino worked at Espanyol, at Southampton, and at Tottenham. And we know that he's somebody who has very high demands in terms of discipline and the way the players behave on and off the pitch. So maybe they brought him precisely for that reason, because they understand that some of their star players do need... and Neymar is not the only one. Would you think of somebody like Verratti, for example, who is clearly one of the great talents of his generation in midfield, has never been able to fulfill this potential precisely because of a lifestyle that is perhaps not exactly ideal for a top footballer, and a number of injuries, which perhaps were also caused by the fact that he doesn't look after himself as he should. So you bring in Mauricio Pochettino and you hope he's going to bring in the same kind of discipline he brought in his previous clubs. But that goes, obviously, with a risk, which is the antagonization of some key players within that PSG team, players who've been there for a while, players who've seen managers come and go, and whom, at the end of Tuchel's reign, really couldn't care less about what was going to happen to their manager or not, whatever the messages of social networks might have been.
So maybe in some respects for Pochettino, it's a shot to nothing. This elevates him to the level of super club manager, which is a nice merry-go-round to get on board. And if things go very badly awry, his stock is high enough for him to explain this away as well. Look, it's a basket case. Nobody can sort out that mess over there. And so he probably walks into a pretty big job in 18 months if things go badly awry from the off.
Yes, indeed. And if he walks off at some point, be it in 18 months or earlier, it will be with probably a French League champion title to his honours list, which is empty for the time being. And he might have another treble. There's no reason. PSG are so far ahead of everybody else that, believe me, the situation will right itself. Pandemic permitting, of course. And you will see PSG dominating the game in France as it has done for a number of years. In Europe, it's a different thing. They've done, in a way, the most important thing. They've qualified, which is another thing which wasn't held in Tuchel's favour, and which, by the way, I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of his assistants, called Zsolt Löw, who is Hungarian, so apologies if I've completely... made a mess of his name, but had talked to one of his country's papers just after the weekend, I believe, and actually starting to spill the beans a little bit and explaining that the decision was absolutely incomprehensible and insisting on the fact that the primes we learn out were the root of it, and that people just didn't realize what Tuchel had actually achieved with that group of players, and that he'd gone as far as he could in that context. So yes, I would say it's a bit of a risk for Pochettino, but it's not a huge risk after all. He will win titles with PSG. If he didn't, there would be real questions asked about, his leadership and management, but he will. And everybody knows the way that PSG is functioning. If he fails in getting the kind of harmony and the kind of and putting together the kind of football that people want to see, it will be put down, like it has been for his predecessors, with the exception perhaps of Unai Emery, to the fact that it is a basket case of a club, where the problems do not lie with the technicians and the coaches, and maybe not even with the players as such, but with the whole pyramid and the way that the club is run from the top. So in this case, it's a very well-paid job. It's in the city which he likes, in a club of which he's obviously a very important figure as a player. I would say no strings attached in many ways, so you can totally understand why he decided to say yes to El Khalifi when the proposal came.
Yes, I suppose I'm talking up the negative aspects of the job, which are very real, and Pochettino has to go in with his eyes wide open. But you think of the positives. We did, as you say, see a kind of collective focus blossom last year in the latter stages of the Champions League, and they reached a final.
Very much so, yeah.
By all accounts, there was a dinner at Verratti's restaurant, no less, where they said, come on, let's get it together and give this a bit of a push. And when they did, they obviously got to a final. So if Pochettino arrives there and can tap into that, wherever that is buried, these are still high-level professionals who do want to win things, I'm sure. Maybe there is, some way he can tap into that drive and say, well, look, one year of hard-working collective here, and I brought Spurs to a Champions League final. I can certainly bring you guys back to one, and maybe one step beyond. He does have talent at his disposal. Like that is the carrot here. That is the big carrot here. Neymar, Mbappe, I think they've already. Is it a year left in their contract, Philippe?
Year and a half.
Okay.
Contract expiring 30th June 2022 in both cases. Situation is a little bit unclear at the moment because obviously the fact that Pochettino has been appointed does change quite a lot of things. But just to rebound on what you were just saying, it is absolutely true that there is absolutely wonderful material to work with, and it's not because we are poking fun or even pointing the finger at Neymar for his extracurricular activities. We have to remember that when he was fit and he was playing, he was absolutely superb with Tuchel, absolutely magnificent, really. And it gets lost a little bit in all the controversies and the image and the reputation he now carries. But he was absolutely superb when he was called on and he was fit, which is, of course, a big problem. Kylian Mbappe is a bit of an enigma because he's gone backwards. He's not as transient, he's not as at ease with himself, I would say, than he was a year or 2 years ago. So maybe if Pochettino can find the key back to the Mbappe that we knew, and we know he can be one of the world's top players, there's no doubt about that, then you think, oh my goodness, yes, it is really well worth having a go. And and you look at the other players around him, I mean, it's not exactly a bad squad. It's a strange squad. It's unbalanced because you've got some players whom you can genuinely call international or even world class, playing alongside players who probably would belong in a mid-table team in Ligue 1. I exaggerate, but not much. So if he can do that, and the other thing as well is that Pochettino is somebody who knows how to use the youth system. And PSG's youth system, whatever the faults of the club, is actually pretty damn good. And he's actually, in his squad for tonight's game, he's brought in a couple of 17-year-olds, partly because of injuries and sickness and so forth, but also because he wants to have a look at them. So you're thinking, okay, well, maybe he can do something. And if there is one person who can do something, when you think of the state that Tottenham was in when he arrived, what he did with Tottenham, you think, why wouldn't he be able to do something similar with PSG?
It's very interesting about Mbappe. I hadn't quite realised his form had dipped that way. So what kind of a player are you seeing on the pitch in comparison with the superstar of the last World Cup, for instance?
I think that I see a player who is not as smart in his choices, which is for Mbappe crazy to say because he's one of the smartest players around. He's one of the most intelligent young men you can come across, both as a person and as a player. He's still as quick as he ever was, but there's an element of indiscipline. I mean, have a look, for example, the red cards he got and how he got them. And you will think, well, this doesn't fit in with the Mbappe we know and love. His efficacy and efficiency, I should say, hasn't been the same. The numbers have dropped. And I've dropped in far too many categories, even if he's had some health problems, some injuries. But also the injuries might have been caused, they were not necessarily impact injuries as well. So you feel there is a player here who is still exceptionally good, but is not quite at the extraordinarily high level we saw him towards the end of his Monaco career, with the French national team, at the beginning of his PSG career. He's not quite there at the moment. And the past season certainly is not one of his best, was not one of his best. So if you can get that Mbappe back, I mean, come on, you've got Angel Di Maria, you've got... you haven't got Edinson Cavani anymore, which is a bit of a problem. You haven't got Thiago Silva anymore, which is another bit of a problem, but you've still got an awful lot of players who are basically game changers. He's got to find a way to make these players like Neymar and Mbappe remember that they play in a team. In fact, that's what I wanted to say for Mbappe. Mbappe, last season, didn't really play as if he were in a team. He probably felt too often that it was up to him to make the difference, for him to do sometimes a bit of a show, but not always, but just to try a little bit too much. And Pochettino is exactly the right person, I think, to take this kind of player on board and to tell him to actually go back to what he does best.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.